I'm also moved by it.
Yes. Yes, tell me about that. What moves you?
You talking to me?
All right, welcome back to the Pretentious Film Bros podcast, where it is our mission to break down stereotypes and build connections through film. My name is Brady Odom, and I'm partnered here with my co-host, Nolan Jones.
We've got a wonderful Halloween special lined up for you today. We are going to start with some spooky season recommendations that you can add either into your list for the future or maybe catch up with this November. Then we're going to get into a great double pairing matchup discussion of two films that could not be more opposite, but also have some very striking similarities. So let's start us off, Brady. Give us your first recommendation. What is one of your favorite films to watch come spooky season?
All right, I'll also say that I wanted to go with some recommendations that I felt like maybe they won't fit entirely into a pretentious or film bro-esque vibe, but I feel like for me, they kind of teeter that line between both of them. So I thought, you know what, let me do one of my favorites. It's a black and white film from the 1960s. I don't think it's really considered like a Halloween-esque type movie, but it definitely is like 100% the vibe and tone of the spooky season. And that movie is going to be Carnival of Souls. And so I first saw Carnival of Souls many years ago when I first started getting into movies, when I first signed up on Letterboxd, and I started following some different people, some bigger names, some people I had no idea who they were. I just wanted to start seeing people post about movies, and somebody had posted on there, I don't even remember who it was, but they mentioned Carnival of Souls. And so it looked like it was going to give me like Night of the Living Dead vibes. And I thought, you know what? Why don't I just give it a shot? So I turned it on, and I can tell you the story, whether it makes the sense at all times is debatable, but it definitely is one of those things where the tone and the atmosphere is drippy. I cannot express it enough. Every frame is just filled with this vibe that I don't want to leave, but I also don't ever want to be a part of. And so, yeah, my first recommendation is I feel like one of those that if you like the old time scares where they're not going to like keep you up at night, but it definitely is going to give you that vibe and that feel, I think that would be the one to go with. Carnival of Souls.
Yeah, and I remember watching that one with you too the first time, and it is a very kind of a slow burn type horror film, but it does have those vibes. Man, you will feel it, and it's just dripping with the sense of almost a kind of grossness to it, really, where you're like, I'm so intrigued by this world, but I don't want to be a part of it ever. So that's a great first pick. And that teeters that line of just perfect. It's not quite a film bro film, but it's not quite pretentious. It's a great entry into anybody who's looking for a horror film that's not going to terrify you, but you're still intrigued, especially by the older films.
Yeah, and that was my most important thing was I want anybody could watch it. It's not going to scare them to death when they go to sleep at night, and they're not going to be watching it with the blankets covered up, but they might be sitting there just a little uncomfy, and that's the perfect place to be during the Halloween season.
That it is. And since you went ahead and started with a vibe film, I'm going to go ahead and follow it up. And this is actually one of my favorite horror films of all time. It's in my top 3. It's a French film, so you do have to read the subtitles. But man, you want to talk about an atmosphere and a feeling. This is George Franju's Eyes Without a Face. So yes, it's pretentious. It's got that lovely Criterion C. So you know you're getting a pretentious film. But man, you just, as you're sitting in this film was so shocking. When it first came out in the 1960s, there's a moment at the center of this film that I'm not even going to start to go into here. But you talk about a tense film, you talk about an atmospheric film, you talk about a film that is so relationship driven. This is a film about a father and a daughter and trying to atone for sins and mistakes of the past in ways that are probably not the best ways to try to atone for your sins. But man, it's got the vibes. It is beautiful. This is a beautiful film, and there's few things I love as much as a beautiful horror film. I love when we put the beauty and the grotesque together to just give us something that is so strange and shouldn't work, but man, this is one I keep going back to. It is worth reading the subtitles. It is worth the black and white. It was shocking when it came out. It still could shock audiences today. So this is a high recommendation for me, especially if you're looking for a foreign film this Halloween season. Eyes Without a Face, you can't miss it.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember watching that with you for the first time. It's funny that both of our movies that we picked here were both ones we got to show each other. And, Carnival of Souls doesn't have that family driven vibe. It's very much about a woman in just complete paranoia, where Eyes Without a Face feels more of like a film, something that people got together and they worked hard on. Where mine is more like this guerrilla style, people just out doing whatever they can, and it feels like it's just the makeup is bad, but it fits. And Eyes Without a Face, it's like everything is pristine and it sounds amazing. Like when you watch it, even like the eerie vibes just immediately sink in with that opening credit sequence from the car. It is just, I haven't gotten the chance, or I haven't taken the opportunity to go back and rewatch it, but it is, Eyes Without a Face is 100% a recommendation from not just Nolan, but I would say from anybody who likes horror movies and has seen it, they would recommend Eyes Without a Face.
And the greatest thing about it is it's got that pretentious feel to it, but it's also so pulpy. Like it's
Mm,
just saturated in this easy access kind of pulp horror feel that it's pretentious, but it's also very welcoming. You can tell that it was made by a filmmaker who just loves the art of film. He wasn't trying to test a theory or to experiment.
mm,
He just wanted to tell a story
mm.
about something that he wanted to tell a story about. And he was a man that loved film. And I think more than anything, that's why I keep coming back to that, because it's a
Yeah.
film lover's made film. So
Yep.
I'll go ahead and I'll let you give us your second recommendation. What do you got for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was going back and forth between multiple selections, and I was like, do I want to do one that's gonna for the people who want it to get under their skin and they can't get rid of it, or did I want to do something that was more subversive? Did I want to do something that was more patient but more rewarding? And I thought of one that actually just came out just a few years ago, and it was one that really, when I first watched it, there were scenes in this that were the scariest moments of the movies that year. And I would say, even of in all of horror that I've seen, there are still scenes in this movie that stick with me that I can recall as if I had just watched it. And I actually even take this movie, if I have the opportunity to show this movie to somebody, it might be 99% of it is just to have them see the one scene I'm talking about. And that movie is The Night House, directed by David Bruckner, starring Rebecca Hall. And that movie is one of those that I thought, you know what, that would even pair pretty well with Carnival of Souls as a double feature, because it's about a woman who, again, is starting to be alerted to the real dangers of the world, but it feels very intimate and it feels very intentional towards her and her trying to figure out what's going on. It's very cerebral. It's not like Carnival of Souls where it just is kind of happening and you just have to go with it. It's very much one of those movies you sit down and you think about, okay, what is really going on here? You see things that don't make sense, and then you rewatch it again, you're like, oh my gosh, okay, now I get it. And it's one of those movies too where it's not going to blow your mind. It's not going to be one of the best movies you've ever seen in your entire life. But for the spooky season, it is, I feel like, one of those that it's a good lake house vibe movie. Like the leaves are starting to fall, the cloudy and overcast skies. And again, it might even be best watched alone. Even if you want other people to watch it with you because you want to show them these scenes, of watching it by yourself for the first time, getting into that mindset that this woman is in and just letting it seep into you. Yeah, I when I found that movie again, I was like, you know what? That's 100% the movie I have to recommend. And so one is older, one's newer, both about women being victims, but also they are the ones who are trying to solve what's going on, and both kind of have a twist. They're not, one is less of a twist, the other is definitely more of one, but it yeah. So my two recommendations are going to be uh, Carnival of Souls and The Night House.
Well, we are definitely beginning this show with a very female main character driven episode, and it looks like
Mm.
it's probably going to continue that way throughout the course of the show. Of course, that's just part of the horror genre. But so for my second recommendation, I went back and forth on a couple too. I had some newer films. I thought of films such as Pearl that came out in 2022. That was a strong film that came out that year. I thought of obviously the obvious ones such as Scream or Nightmare Before Christmas, those films that everybody knows. But I wanted to give you something new and something that's a little more independent, might have flown under the radar back in the early 2000s, that I just discovered because some fancy studio label put it out. And I said, hey, man, that looks pretty. I want to check it out and see what it is. And that film is May. So this film is about a young woman who is painfully alone. She has a very hard time meeting people, making friends, making connections of any sort. She was raised alone as a child. And one of the things her mother always taught her when she was growing up was, if you can't find a friend, make one. So what you've got here is a very interesting kind of take on the Frankenstein story, on creating a friend, creating someone there. But it's also this interesting exploration of loneliness. And I'm making this film sound really pretentious, and I promise you it's not. The best way I can describe this film is like the love child between Texas Chainsaw Massacre and a Dario Argento film. And it's just wonderful. It takes the best parts of all of those two films put together. It's one that you can't miss. If you haven't seen it, you've got to check it out. If you have seen it, chances are you love this film just like I do, and just like everybody else who's seen it. It's a great modern horror masterpiece, and I would recommend that anybody who hasn't seen this film, you got to check it out.
I think that, I definitely am on that list. I have never gotten around to May. Maybe now this is a year. I finally just turn it on and I
this is the
sit
year.
through it. Yeah, I know that it's going to be good. I have that feeling. I think it just, every time I go to sit down and do it, I for whatever reason I just don't commit. So I need to commit. I need to just finally
commit. You gotta
I just need to turn it on and do it. And it's interesting that you did like May talking about needing to build relationships, and you talked about Eyes Without a Face, about a father-daughter relationship, and they're very relational driven. Where mine, there is definitely elements of relationships, but it's also learning to deal with lost relationships without giving too much away. And it's interesting because I didn't expect us to go this heavy women centric when we were discussing like what movies we thought we could recommend. But it definitely is not surprising given the topic at hand. Talking about two very prominent females, if you want. And
so the show now, you can't be going there quite yet.
Yeah, so something for everybody who's listening as well is this will be a spoiler conversation. So if you've not seen either of these movies that we're about to discuss, you need to be ready. One movie has just celebrated their 65th year anniversary. So not that you've had 65 years to see it, but if you haven't, just understand that it's been talked about. It's Psycho. It's popular. It's iconic. It's one of those things that its reputation precedes it. So if you are wondering, like, "Ooh, are they going to actually spoil anything?" Yes, that's the point of this conversation.
That's what we've got to do to really do these films justice.
Yeah, and the other film that we're going to be discussing in partnership with it is Sleepaway Camp. And Sleepaway Camp, this will be one too where we had both seen both of these movies before, and when we were coming up with the topic of discussion for Halloween, obviously one of those things that always looms is the slasher genre. And we both are big fans of the slasher genre. A lot of our favorite horror movies are slasher related. Two of my all-time favorite movies, top 10, are slashers. And so for this to be the discussion we started off with for a Halloween special, it just made too much sense. And so, so we're going to discuss them. We're going to talk about each movie individually, spending more time on one and then talk about the similarities and the differences between the two movies. And so going forward now, this is going to be a spoiler discussion. And so we're going to be talking about, first and foremost, we're going to be talking about the movie Sleepaway Camp. So,
Wonderful. I've been looking forward to this.
yeah. Yeah, you and no one else has, but that I definitely am one of those
That's a
guys
cult
where
following, my friend.
it does,
Special kind of
and
weirdos that like this movie.
yeah, yeah, no no arguments here. So, but one of the things that I wanted to talk about when it comes to Sleepaway Camp is this is not the first time I'd seen this movie. I definitely seen this movie before, and it is one that I despised the first time I watched it. I had zero desire to watch it. I had zero desire to uh, really spend time with it. But when I saw it, I was like, you know what? It looks like it'd be like a campy little horror movie. I just want to add something to my Letterboxd account. And I watched this years ago, and it was bad. And then Nolan, he finally got around to it.
Yep, I caught up with it this year over the summer because a summer camp slasher in the summer is about the best time to do it.
Yeah.
And I just I fell in love with this movie. Man, I thought it, and not in a sense that it's the greatest movie of all time, because let's be very clear. This is a B-list trashy slasher.
B-list.
That being said,
sure, B-list. That's right.
Yeah. You know what? It's all negotiable. That being said, even upon rewatching this movie just a couple months later, man, I'm still here to defend it. So let's go ahead. I've been itching for months to hear what you have to say, Brady. Give me the rundown. Let's see what we got.
Yeah. So for those of you who don't know, we wanted to start this podcast just to kind of talk through stuff. So we're going to have some bullet points. We're going to hit some major ideals, or major ideas, I should say, and we're going to talk about it. But it's going to be pretty freehand. It's going to be all over the place. But we are going to hit important things. And so one of the things is that this was directed by, his name is Robert Hiltzik, or as I would call him, Hiltzik. This movie is, in my opinion, if you go on my Letterboxd account, which we'll have those linked, but I gave this movie a half star. Nolan, would you care to tell everybody the amount of stars you gave this movie?
I gave it 3 stars with a like, which essentially
he gave it 3 stars with a like.
3.5-star film. And
so
it's one that I'm super happy to revisit.
Yeah, and one of the things about our rating systems is I use the half star rating. I haven't always. Nolan does not use a half star rating. He just does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they get to a point where they get the like, they earn the like, and then there's those after, like before the 3. You can be a 3-star. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you can be a 3-star and not receive the like. Correct?
Yes.
Okay, but if you're after the 3-star,
average film.
Yeah. So, but if you're after the 3-star, it's getting a like. Like there's no
one way or another, whether it's respect for the film, whether it's recognizing the greatness, even though it's not maybe my particular favorite. Yeah, if you're a 3 and a like or higher, you're getting a like.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So I turned this film on, and this was years ago, and I got to the end, and I don't know if I was just trying to be this pretentious, like, just jerk who was like, you know what? No, it has 0 redeemable qualities, and this is horrible, and this isn't The Godfather, or, this isn't Psycho, or this isn't any kind of high quality. This isn't Jaws, or whatever, what have you. It's a bad movie. It's a C, D, E, F list kind of movie that looks bad, it sounds bad, it is bad. Then I rewatched it, and I was like, you know what? Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I was too critical. No, I was not. I was not critical enough. This movie is bad. I was taking my notes, and I was like, you know what? The score is fascinating.
The score is great.
But it felt completely derivative of anything else that would be surrounding it at the time. It is not a movie that came up with this score on its own and was like, you know what? Yeah, we are. But it still sounded good. And I would say the score is the best part of this movie. Well, I'll say it's the second best part. I would argue maybe the twist is what makes this movie worth watching at all. Um, and we'll get into that. But you know what? I saw this review and somebody was talking about the cinematography of Sleepaway Camp, and they were like, for the life of me, I cannot figure out if I like or hate the fact that it looks like an episode of the Brady Bunch. And I literally sat there watching it like, you know what? This really doesn't, I don't know how to describe it, put it into words, but it was like a 2-camera setup. And it was, most of these shots are static, right?
Point and
They're
shoot.
they're just sitting still on a tripod, capturing what they throw in front of it.
Yep.
And
Just
so it's
point
not
and shoot.
awful. Say that again.
Just a point and shoot. Set
Yeah,
up the
just a
camera,
point and
shoot
shoot.
the shot, move on.
Which there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. And so it's not that the cinematography is awful, but it's just not. It's not trying to be. It's not trying to make up for anything. When you watch other movies like 28 Days Later, you'll see director like Danny Boyle goes in there and he doesn't have a huge budget, but you can tell he has chops by how he places the camera, what he does with the camera. You can tell he's actually trying to tell a story with the camera work. He's making up for the budget by trying to he's making up for the budget by trying to like show his chops and keep you intrigued in the story. Where Sleepaway Camp, they don't even try that. Which is okay. Each their own. It's whatever. But I also it's hard to say because I mean I've mentioned this to you before, but like one of the things that is for me when I am watching a movie and I understand that this isn't a big Hollywood budget movie. So I know you're not going to get actors like DiCaprio. You're not going to get actors that come in and they blow your mind like Swinton or Phoenix or whoever. But the acting in this is so bad. It's like, who even tried? Did they even try? If I watched this film come out, if I watched this film come out and I was a director, I would put my name down as anonymous. I would not want anybody to know that with this direction that my name was associated. And so now that's just all technical. And so when you're watching it, Nolan, when you're watching the technical side of this movie, do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you think I'm maybe being a little bit too harsh? Do you think that maybe, I should just put myself in his shoes and see what I come up with? Like, what are your feelings when it comes to the technical side of Sleepaway Camp?
Well, here's the things. I can't argue with you about any of that. Although I'm going to try a little bit with the acting part, but we can get into that more because I'm looking at it. Story, characters doesn't make sense for that. So we'll get to that part. But yeah, Sleepaway Camp is basic. It's a very basic setup story. But you can tell these are people that just wanted to go and they wanted to make a movie.
Mm-hmm. And I respect that. And I
love that.
I love that idea. I really do. If you just want to take it and go crazy, go crazy. I love that.
Now, and it's not. Sleepaway Camp's interesting because it's not one of those films that's gonna change your life. But at the same time, there are so many people that this film has changed their life. And they're looking at, I don't know if it's a character aspect of it. I don't know if it's the slasher and the gore, if it's the story part. It's definitely not the technical. I mean, let's be honest. This movie was made to capitalize on the camp slasher craze. Came out real quick in the early 80s to capitalize on films such as Friday the 13th and to just ride that camp wave. Of course, it's derivative. It's a camp slasher. It's not trying to reinvent the wheel. It's not a revolutionary film. It's very simple. It's very basic. It's very bland. It's very rough. But to me, that's where I find the charm for this film.
I knew that's the only way you could like it is if you're watching it and you're like, it's charming. Look at it. It's charming, which, okay, sure. I think there's bad movies I've watched where I've been charmed by its badness. This just was not one of them, but I appreciate that aspect. I think I honestly do believe there would be some of the people that listen that they're going to appreciate the charm. They're going to be like, Brady, you're being what standard are you holding Sleepaway Camp to? What's like, just stop.
Psycho.
Yeah, right. It's like, you know what? I get it, but yeah, no. I think your feeling towards it is how a lot of people will feel.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and let's really start digging into it, just walking through this film. So we can hit, and as we go, we can hit those actors, we can hit the scenes, we can hit the dialogue, because I know that's something that just makes you cringe beyond belief, and I just love it. There's so many lines in here that I can't wait to share. Um, there's an insult in this that my wife and I use back to back on each other, just in our playful banter. So, and she would tell you she can't stand this film, but yet she's the one that always uses this line. So I don't know what that means. But let's go ahead and get started. And we'll start with the technicality. So, maybe the best part, technically, of this whole 85 minute affair is the opening credit sequence. I love the opening of this film. The way it walks through this abandoned camp, how you see the cabins and the lake and the setting. The music, while maybe it is derivative, it sets you up, and it almost sets you up only to pull the rug out from under you, because it sets up to something that's going to be really amazing. Like, you're expecting this based on the score and based on the camera and the way it walks through, and then landing finally on this abandoned camp closed sign. You're like, ooh, this is going to be something great.
Hmm.
And then it goes into the opening actual first scene of the movie with the boating accident. And then you're like, where did that rug go? And I'm not going to argue with you. That boat opening, that accident scene, is probably some of the worst acting in the whole film.
Okay, I'm glad that you
first scene
mentioned
is
that one in
very
particular
painful to watch.
because I thought of that same thing. I was like, I cannot believe, like when I when I was watching it and I saw the acting in that boating scene, I was like, I knew I was right. I knew I wasn't just trying to be pretentious. This is awful. Now, of course, I will give credit where credit's due, and we'll talk about it. There is one actor who is particularly strong in this movie, and it's important that they are because it hinges on them entirely. And
Okay.
so, but that I'm so glad you mentioned that, because when I was watching that boating scene, I was like, no. I was like, it's not only poorly acted though, Nolan. I would argue it's poorly edited. There's nothing, like, you're trying to, like, set up this scene of, oh, they're gonna, the opening scene is these teenagers on a, like, speedboat, and then there's this brother and sister on this small sailboat with their dad,
Yeah,
and they
young
tip
kids,
over the
probably
sailboat.
10 or younger.
Yeah, I
Very
mean, they are young. They tip over the sailboat. He just starts kind of wrestling with them in the water, which also, if we just talk, like, why are they on a sailboat if they can stand in the water? He's not even swimming. He is standing straight up. His shoulders are out of the water. Why are you on a
Because
boat?
sometimes, man, life just looks better from the boat. Like, why
Hey,
stand in the water when you can float on a boat and just enjoy life?
yes, yeah, sure. For me, I was like, I just saw that and was like, of course they are. Okay, why not? And
Mm,
so, but obviously, the technical aspect of that, their budget was not high. Their budget, they didn't have talented filmmakers coming on this project who were going to blow your mind and who were going to tackle it and show you, like, hey, we're going to make the slasher genre something special. That was never their goal. They're not Scream. They're not trying to make it special. They're just trying to do their part and just get the movie out there, right?
right.
So, yeah, I would say on a technical aspect too, when you're talking about, like, we've talked about uh the cinematography, it's just very basic. You mentioned the score. I would argue the score is really good. I would say it's well done. It does put you in a mood. And I agree with you also about the opening segment. I think the opening segment is really strong. It's 1 minute long,
Right.
and if that's your strongest, or if that's your second strongest, and the other strongest moment you have is only 20 seconds long, If you have 1 minute and 20 seconds of strength in an hour and a half movie, the percentage on that, I mean, that's not high. So
Oh man, you're really gonna make me have my work cut out for me defending this movie, but I'm
yeah,
gonna try.
I'm
I'm
not
gonna
gonna make
try.
it easy on you.
I'm not gonna be able to convince you, but I'll find a couple people out there like me that are like, yes, absolutely. And I kind of blew past this, but I want to hit it. This movie opens with a black screen that says "In fond memory of Mom."
Hmm.
Man, for Sleepaway Camp to be the movie that's made in fond memory of you, you must have been a legend. And that is
Yeah,
all I gotta say on that. I just wanted to address it and not let that breeze by.
I'm glad you did address that because I think that that is something that I thought of throughout the entire movie, the feeling that it says in like addressed to mom, like in honor of mom, like this in fond memory of mom, this vibe. And then you see the mother character
Mm-hmm.
that's not on screen for a very long time,
Nope, not really.
but she is memorable.
Oh.
She's a very memorable character. I would argue her acting is as bad as the next.
All right, let's go into
I
that now too, since we brought it up. That's a great, because that's where I wanted to
yeah,
head next. Aunt Martha, the mother figure. So go ahead and keep going, and then I'm gonna come
yeah.
back with a response, obviously.
So Aunt Martha at the very beginning, and I appreciated this. I when I was writing down just my unabridged thoughts, I thought, you know what, the mother character in this, Aunt Martha, she does a really good job of portraying this kind of twisted personality. Like she's very much like she's saying a thought and she's saying it to the person and then she comes back and she's like talking to herself again, like she's trying to argue with herself and like present this thought to this other person and then come back and she's going to think, is that really what I should do here, is that really the best move? And so the foreshadowing on her character and what she the limits she might go to, it's solid because you see the fact that she's weird. She's a quirky character and she's only in it for a total of I think 5 minutes of screen time.
Probably something
Like
along those lines.
one moment at the very beginning and then one moment for like 20 to 30 seconds at the very end. And she's there, but she's very memorable. She has this, you can feel her spirit kind of evading throughout this movie. And Aunt Martha is, yeah, she's a weirdo. She
Oh, she's
actually,
got to
yeah,
be one of the
she's
most disturbed characters in all of horror.
in all of horror.
In all of horror, maybe in all of film. Because, I mean,
Mm,
this woman is fractured like a broken mirror. And
yeah,
I remember watching this the first time, I was like, that acting is atrocious. I can't, it's so painful to watch. But then even now, after rewatching it and still recognizing this acting is painful, I'm also like, she's either the greatest actor in this film or she is the absolute worst. There's
that's a
really no in between. It depends on how you see her. And on the rewatch, I loved her.
yeah. I agree with you. Aunt Martha is either the best actress in this whole thing, or she is the worst. I want to lean towards the worst because I do think that there is a performance that is really captivating and arguably teeters that line of fractured humanity better than Martha does. I think she follows it well. I think that she does this sort of like very on the nose split personality vibe where there's our lead character, Angela, who is easily the only reason this film has any legs to stand on. If you didn't have this lead performance in Angela, I don't think this film. I already don't think it's worth watching. But if you like camp, and I don't mean like summer camp, I mean if you like camp horror, this will fit the aesthetic that you're looking for. Um, but she's the only reason that would make it worth watching in the first place. I read this other review that had talked about Sleepaway Camp, and they gave it 3.5 stars. This was their ratings. They gave it 3.5 stars, and they made the comment that Scream owes the way in which the teenagers act at camp, their kind of mean-spirited bully aspect vibes. They owe Scream owes how they built their characters to Sleepaway Camp. And I was like, I do not think so. It
No.
is a movie, for one, where you're talking about you have actual teenagers, right? Where
Right.
Scream, they're not actual teenagers.
No.
But that's what makes the movie work is you have accomplished actors, and it's the 90s. Everybody's going to buy that they're teenagers or that they're supposed to play teenagers. Tobey Maguire played Spider-Man a couple of years later. Like, that kid was not 16 when he donned the mask, but Sleepaway Camp has these characters, these teenage characters that they are fun in the way that they treat each other. There is that camp hazing vibe. It definitely feels like a camp. I would 100% say that that's the truth. I would say you can't argue it any other way. It also is one of those things where you can tell that they're acting, which is okay. It's whatever, yada yada yada. But they're not they're not irredeemable. They're just kids. They're teenagers who aren't paid. Now, okay, I mean irredeemable in their acting quality.
Got it.
We'll discuss what about them is irredeemable. But I think that when it comes down to it, the movie where it fails for me is I feel like there's a hidden agenda underneath the film. I feel like there's a hidden creepy factor to the film. One of the lines actually that we've discussed is there's a line where all the kids first arrive at camp, and you meet the chef and the other chef. You meet them, and they're talking to each other. They're watching as the kids come flooding on into camp, and one of them refers to the people, the kids, as baldies. Which, when you hear that line, is there? I mean, there's no way around that, and you can't really say that even in anything other. It feels exploitative when I hear that line, and then I hear how the other chef responds to it. Is like, oh, they don't know what you got on your mind, Artie. And it's kind of like this shrug off, like he's not doing it, he's not participating in whatever this other guy's going to participate in, but he's not stopping it. He knows it's happening, and even whenever Artie gets what's coming to him, he's not uh he's sad about it. He's upset that this happened to him, and Artie deserves everything he got. He deserves worse, honestly, but he deserves everything he got for sure.
Yeah, that's probably the hardest. And I say hardest, I don't know if hardest is quite the right word. The most maybe inexcusable part of the film is Artie's character and that whole segment. That's the absolute grossest part of this whole movie. And there's a lot of gross in this movie. I mean,
Yeah,
some of the makeup, special effects, and things, they are viscerally gross. But
yeah,
yeah, Artie's one of those characters that I'm like, I can't excuse that. I can't defend him except to say, of all of the victims, and I use that word loosely for everybody in this film
hmm
because all of them are terrible almost. Um,
yeah,
but of all of the victims, Artie's the one that has to live with his attack.
hmm
And to me, that's the only way that, for lack of a better word, I can justify that. Is Artie
yeah,
had to live with those burns and those boils for the rest of his life.
mm,
So that puts me a little more at ease. But yeah, just that whole segment, that's the one thing that I'm like, I can't excuse that. I can't defend that. I just have to recognize that that's part of this script, that there are people like that, and that's a reflection of this time. You could
Yeah.
never get away with something like that in a movie today. But in the
Mm.
80s, you could get away with things like that. And for an ultra independent movie, you could.
Mhm.
So that's just one of those things that, as the movie, I'm not going to defend it. I'm not going to
Mhm.
say it was right. But I can accept it as a piece of that film and as
Mhm.
a piece of that history. Um, and largely because Artie gets what's coming to him and he
Yeah.
has to live with his pain for the rest of his life. So to me, that works out. I'm like,
Mhm.
it's nice to me that he did not get off so easy as death as
Mhm.
all the other characters did. Um,
Yeah.
so that's where I go with that. That's the best I can say. I can't defend it, but I can say he gets what's coming to him, and I'm satisfied with what he gets
No, and that
because
makes sense.
he deserved it probably more than any other character that got what was coming to him. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And just to make sense of everything that's going on, is when you're watching this movie, you meet this character, Angela, who is introduced to us, and she's coming to camp after Aunt Martha has sent away her son and her and his cousin to come to camp. And they're going to sleepaway camp. They're going to be there for the whole summer. And I think it's technically called Camp Sleepaway, but the movie is titled Sleepaway Camp. And so when they get sent to this camp, you see that the cousin he's pretty outspoken. He's a pretty like decent like kid. He seems to have a good head on his shoulders. Where Angela is this quiet kid. They do not. There's no outgoingness from Angela. Angela is very reserved, keeps to themselves. Like there's no.
yeah, and it's
There,
worth noting real quick too before we go any further. Angela is the surviving child of the boating accident that
yes,
opens the film.
absolutely.
She is the surviving child, and she's gone to live with her cousin Bricky and her aunt Martha because her father was killed in that accident, along
Yes,
with her siblings.
absolutely. Now this isn't obvious when you're watching the movie. You don't really know how Angela got to be where she's at. Like Angela, there's not like, oh, and now Angela comes and lives with her cousin because her dad died. You just see in the beginning sequence that the dad dies and one other child dies and one is left drowning, and Angela is assumed to be the one that has lived. And so then you kind of put that together on your own because there's no groundwork there on their end, which I think is the flaw of the film. And so now you start to see these awful characters come into light. Now, some of them are students and some of them are the camp leaders. And so there's an incident, as we mentioned with Artie, where Artie has to live with these burns that are put all over his body. Well, the reason Artie is even targeted is because obviously he made that horrible comment. So we know that he's not a decent human. And then later, he's about to inappropriately address Angela, and it's stopped by the cousin interfering. The cousin comes in and sees what's going on. He sees Artie, quote unquote, with his pants down, and then they're able to escape together. Well, then later, from the perspective of the attacker, you see Hands push Artie into this big pot that he's making for all the campers. So now you know the kind of movie you're getting into. Now you know, like, okay, so there's going to be some violence, there's going to be some attacks, there's going to be like even this feeling of a vigilante at camp.
Yeah.
Now, in my opinion, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but in my opinion,
Well,
it feels really obvious that it's Angela.
oh, there's no doubt from the
Yeah.
way the movie sets up who the killer is. And it tries to red herring you on multiple occasions. It tries to lead you to think that it's Ricky who's getting revenge for his cousin, for all the attacks that she undergoes, but it's very clear that Angela is the one doing these. If you don't get that from the first attack, which you may not, as things progress, that becomes more and more clear. That's
Mm.
not a surprise reveal by the
Yes.
end of the film.
And I'm glad that you see it the same way, because when I was rewatching it, and I didn't hate it, I wasn't like, oh, okay, yeah, I don't think they're really trying. I didn't think it was the film's intention. I'll say that.
No.
And I say film lightly. Because I don't think I would ever refer to this as a film, but I don't think it's the movie's intention to have this be a big twist reveal that Angela is the one who's killing the kids. Now, of course, there might be some elements where they want you to believe that it could be anybody, because if before the person that is being targeted is killed, if they look face to face with the person who's trying to kill or attack them, it doesn't show the attacker's face and they never say their name. And now they all know everybody's name. That's seen in the movie. But they'll say something along the lines of, it's you, which of course we've seen. If you've seen any cheesy movie ever, you know that that's going to be something that's like a staple in there, where they're like, oh, I can't believe it's you. Where there's no identifying noun to show who this person is.
Nope.
And so now they have moments like that, and there's multiple kills, and I would say each of the kills are unique. And one of the things to talk about in comparison to the other movie is they're unique. I would argue they're impulsive. None of the kills are none of them are ever premeditated. They're all very much
They're
like
very reactionary.
yes.
I would say they're some of the most creative kills in a horror movie.
I
Because we
would
know, you look at the typical slashers, Freddy's got his glove. That's how he kills. Ghostface has his knife. Michael Myers has a knife. But the killer in Sleepaway Camp, which we've already revealed, is Angela, uses all kinds of methods of kill. Artie gets burned, third-degree burns from this pot. The next kill, I believe, is a drowning. A boy's drowned in a canoe. The next kill is by bumblebees and multiple bee stings. Like, these are some of the most creative and most visceral kills of any slasher, I think, period. They're always different, and they're always unique. They're unique to the setting. They're very impulsive in that moment. Some of them may be unique to how that person has wronged Angela. So they're all just very different and very unique. And there's several others that we can walk through as we continue to go through the movie. So yeah, what do you have next? What's the next challenge you want to bring to this movie? Because I'm going to defend the kills and say they're great.
I'm glad that you're going to do that, because maybe you can explain to me. So we've already established that Angela is this quiet kid. Angela is someone who is very repressed. Obviously, your assumption is because they've survived an accident where their sibling and their father has died.
Right.
And so as you watch it, you're thinking, oh, okay, so that's why, they're repressed. Like, they're definitely this person who is dealing with trauma. And then there's this address towards the character like, oh, she doesn't take showers with the rest of the girls, and she also refuses
she hasn't
to get
hit
in the
puberty
water.
either.
Yeah, exactly. There's this feeling where it's like, oh, she's just a little bit insecure about her body, even around other teenage girls.
Yeah, I believe no hair down there is the actual line that Judy uses.
Yeah, Judy, great character.
Oh, yeah.
And so there's all these elements about her being repressed. And so you understand, part of the motivation coming from Angela is like, oh, she is aggressive, and this is how she deals with her repression. She deals with her trauma by killing, and she kills those that she finds worthy of being killed. Now, the kill you mentioned, this is one of the kills. This is probably the only kill, I'll really argue. The bumblebee kill. Okay. So, when they're lifting the nest into the bathroom, because the way that this takes place is this young boy is in a stall, and there's a window, and it looks into the outside, and then you see the window kind of get moved out of the way, and then all of a sudden this nest comes in through the window, and the kid's like, "Hey, what's going on here?" And then you never, of course, see what's happening on the outside. You don't see who's doing it, but then all of a sudden, all these bumblebees start attacking him, and then he's found dead from all the stings that he's had from all these bees. Why did he not just crawl out from underneath the stall? As soon as he sees these bees coming in, he just stays in the stall. He doesn't even try to escape. The assumption is that it just happens to him and he just gets stung to death. And the stall is not one of those stalls where you can't get out from underneath it. I mean, it's huge. There's a huge gap on the ground. And I thought, why doesn't he just try to leave? Like, even try to go to the next stall. Yes, he's getting stung by bees, but they've not picked him up and like have controlled his autonomy. Like he could definitely attempt to get away. And so that is kind of what I felt. I was like, it's a unique kill, 100%. And I'm glad. Well, it probably is unique. I'd have to check the timeline, but Candyman also has a huge connection to bees as well. But I don't remember if Candyman is 90s. So it is a very unique kill, but I don't think it holds up in the fact that this is a kill he could have easily escaped, right? And so, or could have at least attempted to escape, but he didn't even attempt it. So with the rest of the kills, they're pretty much unavoidable. There's a stabbing through the shower, there's the drowning, there's the decapitation, which is, of course, like gruesome. And I would even say the kills are, if you're going to make a summer slasher, they have to be memorable. And I would say these kills are fairly memorable. Yeah. I again think that there's just some element of them that feels, especially the moment, it feels like it feels like the kills belong in a better movie. It feels like the kills, like, they don't add to what I'm watching. It feels like they are separate from what I'm watching. And maybe that's a plus to the movie itself, but yeah, for me, I think the only kill that really was like, why didn't they just crawl out from underneath the stall? That was kind of my like main qualm when it comes to the murders. But yeah, do you have an argument as to why they didn't just crawl out from underneath the stall? Now, if you say, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, my argument for that is you're thinking way too hard for a sleepaway camp movie.
Okay.
I could try to give you some justification of, well, he was panicking, he was freaking out, his mind wasn't thinking. The only thing he was thinking was bang on the door until that broom handle breaks. Because his mind wasn't thinking, just get down and crawl under the stall. But in reality, the truth is, you're thinking way too much for Sleepaway Camp.
Okay, fair enough. I think that's fair. I think it's funny because I actually believe that the reason our ratings differ is because I think way too much about it, and you think the amount they're expecting the viewer to think. And it's not in a diss to you, because you analyze and critique movies all the time, but you're not hoping for something more than what you're going to get. You're just accepting what you're going to get, and you're okay with that. And I think for me, it's like I am very much not in that boat, and I can't even get my mind to be there. And it sucks because I don't like to not like movies. I want to like movies. I want to like whatever I turn on.
Right, of course.
But I just can't. And so I think the best way to kind of end our discussion about Sleepaway Camp is to, unless you have other big things you're thinking about, but I feel like we've covered a lot about this movie that...
Yeah, I mean, there's just a couple of things I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about the dialogue, Because I know
Oh
in your
yes,
most
okay.
recent review, you said this movie's definitely camp, and I want to sleep away. And that's better than 95% of the dialogue in this film. So if
Yeah.
your numbers are mathematically correct, I'm going to give you some of the other 5% of this
Okay.
dialogue that just works for me. Because, I
Okay.
mean, Sleepaway Camp has style. Now, it may
Okay.
not be a good style, but this movie's got style. From the fashion of the 80s, which I did just a little bit of digging on IMDb, because when I get fascinated by a movie, I do a little bit of digging. Apparently, this costuming was not the work of a costume designer. This movie was so budget poor that these costumes were clothes that these people actually owned,
Yeah.
which you could go for better or worse, you could go awesome, or you could go yikes. It depends really on what generation and what area you're from. But I want to talk about some of the dialogue.
Okay.
I think this movie has some of the best insults, just
Okay.
period across the board. You've got, coming from Meg, you've got, if she were any quieter, talking about Angela, she'd be dead.
Yeah.
And I noted that line of dialogue both times I started the film. You've
Yep.
got the one from Billy, or not from Billy, from Ricky when he's trash talking at the ball game. Eat shh and live, Billy. Like, that is
Yeah.
just, to me, that's one of the greatest insults ever. Because Billy
Okay.
goes, he says, eat shh and die.
Yeah.
And Ricky comes back with eat shh and live.
Yeah.
And I love that. Um, I think it's great. And that's one that when my wife and I are messing with each other, or when we're just talking to something on TV that we didn't like, a character did something we didn't like, or whatever. That's a line that often comes up just in our day to day.
That makes sense.
And then you've got some of the insults towards Angela. She's playing with half a deck. She's a nutcake. She's gone Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
Um, you've got some
I
of the
actually wrote
lines
down she's
from
playing with half a deck as one of the
playing with
quotes.
half a deck. You've got some of Judy's lines, which are so telling by the time you get to the end of the movie. What is it? Oh, Judy says to Paul, who is this boy who's kind of taken with Angela, and he's really trying to be a friend to her, and he starts developing this crush to her. Judy tells him, I just didn't think she was your type. You know what I mean? And of
Mm.
course, Judy's talking, oh, she's not attractive enough, she's not pretty
Mm-hmm.
enough. Well, by the time we get to the end of the film, which we're gonna get to here in a minute, Judy's line is very telling in ways that she
Yeah.
had no idea. Um, and then that last one that I've got to pull out, the last insult, is another one from Judy when she's talking about Angela. She says she's a carpenter's dream, flat as a board and in need of a screw. It's
Mm.
probably one of the harshest lines in the film, but also it is just so, it encapsulates what this film is. It's campy,
Yeah.
it's abrasive, it's offensive, and it's funny. And
Mm.
the dialogue in this film works for me. So
Yeah.
there's the 5% that you were saying is good dialogue. In my defense,
Yeah.
I love the insults in this film.
And I would say that that's where the film strives the most is it's the kids banter with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple of lines I have. My dialogue that I was kind of discussing is either it's so offensive that it's hard to get past, the Baldy's line, for example.
Right.
Or it's so offensive because they're not even trying, they're just being so on the nose, it hurts. And okay, for example, there's a line where they said, is there something you would like to do? Go sailing, maybe?
Yep. I noted that too. I was
And
like,
I was
wow,
like,
a
okay.
bold move.
Say that again.
I noted that one this time too. I was like, bold move, asking the kid whose parents died in a sailing
Yeah.
accident to go
If they
sailing.
wouldn't go sailing.
Mm-hmm.
I also had the whole sequence where they eventually get the kid to lean up into the other kid's butt, and they were
Yep.
saying mind over matter, which I was trying to do for this whole film was like power through, mind over matter
Mm-hmm.
for this
And you
whole
ended up
film.
with your face in a butt.
Yeah, and I ended up with my face in a butt, and that's
Sometimes that
very
happens.
telling. So, and there's another line where I was like, oh my gosh, it was so on the nose that I wanted to throw up. And they say, what's she special? Talking about Angela. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, of course. Yeah, she's special, okay? We understand. I get it. All right. So I was like, there were just times where it was like there's foreshadowing, and then
Hmm.
there's direct just calling out to what the movie's about, and it just doesn't feel inspired. It feels very lazy. It feels very poor. So the dialogue is. I appreciate that you brought up the insults, because the insults really are what it makes this movie Sleepaway Camp. The insults are very much the camp atmosphere, because there's so many things that go on. Like, what's her cousin's name? Angela's cousin's name.
Ricky.
Ricky. He has that moment where he is just exploding on the
Mhm.
kids on top of the roof,
Yep.
and I thought that was so hilariously bad that I was dying laughing, because he's just ranting, throwing out every like cuss word in the book. He's
Yep.
so angry at these kids on top of the roof for hazing. Like, buddy, do you even know where you're at? You're at camp with a bunch of teenage boys.
Yep.
And I'm glad you brought up the costuming, because I thought of that when I was watching. I was like, man, this is some like, yeah, this is some 80s wear for sure.
Hmm.
Um, for better or worse. The kids' shorts were ridiculous.
Oh
I was
man.
like, they are like up their butts, dude. These are bad.
I'm glad we missed that generation. I'm glad
Yeah,
they came
same,
after all of that.
same. So, yeah, but you said you wanted to speak on the dialogue. Was there something else you wanted to talk about before we get to the big twist reveal?
No, I wanted to throw out some of those lines that I just love.
Yeah,
I'm here trying to defend this movie, and those were my defense lines.
I appreciate
I
that, and I think
love the
that
campiness of the dialogue.
I think you're doing a good job, because you are defending the movie from the only points it can be defended by. And so I appreciate that, because you're not trying to come here and tell me that I'm misunderstanding what this movie's all about. You're saying you understand entirely what this movie's all about, but I just appreciate it because these lines are funny, and this is what the movie thrives on.
Yeah.
And for myself, I definitely am not in that same boat. So this leads us to our twist, which we're going to talk about, we're going to get to, but we're going to save it, because we brought this in to talk about with Psycho for a reason. Now, if you've seen Psycho, maybe you know where we're going. If you haven't seen Sleepaway Camp as well, maybe you have seen Sleepaway Camp, but for some strange reason you found it more important to watch Sleepaway Camp but not Psycho. Then you'll see what
Great
we're
surprise
talking
to
about.
you.
So, as we go in and talk about Psycho, it's important to understand that. Again, my rating of Sleepaway Camp is a half star. Okay. My rating of it is very, very poor. And my rating of Psycho is 5 stars. I think Psycho is an undisputed masterpiece. I think that it only gets better with time. And after rewatching it, but this time with my wife, who was very intrigued, she was very much in it from beginning to end. It was so exciting to watch it with someone who had never seen it before, because they had no idea what direction this was going. And so, yeah, I'll let you kind of discuss, Nolan, why Psycho is only 1 star better than Sleepaway Camp. Go ahead. you, you start the discussion, and we'll go from
Hold up.
there.
Hold up. You're gonna get me crucified on the internets and from all the film bros and the film nerds with that kind of comment. So just hold your horses there, all right? Yes, Psycho is an undisputed masterpiece. I'm not going to argue with anybody that says that. I'm not going to say that I'm not going to say that. To be fair, when I look at Psycho versus Sleepaway Camp, I'm judging these two films on wholly different spectrums.
Of course.
I know Sleepaway Camp is not only a slasher, which is a lower genre, although you could argue Psycho also is a slasher, one of the earliest slasher. But Sleepaway Camp is a no-budget camp slasher. Like, you really don't get much lower expectations than that. Even
Fair
though
enough.
that's not to say that those expectations are on the ground. That's to say you're dealing with not Alfred Hitchcock.
Mm.
Okay? Alfred Hitchcock is one of those directors, one of those filmmakers that's in a league all of his own. So his ranking compared to Sleepaway Camp is not a 3-star, 4-star. It does not apples to apples this at all. You are comparing apples to carrots. You're not even in the same category of fruit.
Makes sense. Okay.
So, that being said, upon revisiting Psycho, I found I have a lot of those feelings that are the same. Um, to really put myself out there, to be crucified by all the film fanatics, and to have my film fan card revoked. Hitchcock is just not one of my favorite directors. I'm not going to argue that he's got undisputed masterpieces. I can't argue that. And I can't argue that in a sensible way and be a film fan. I just can't. I can't say he's a bad filmmaker. He's a master. He's one of the masters of what he did. He's one of the greatest of all time. But his style is not one that usually connects with me. His stories, the way he tells them, the focus he puts towards plot over character, isn't one that I can always connect with. That being said, there are a handful of Hitchcock films that I do absolutely love. If you've not seen Dial M for Murder, which is one of his more obscure films, that's my favorite Hitchcock by far. Of course, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about Psycho. So I set all that up to say, for Psycho to have a 4-star rating is still a very good rating. And I still recognize this film as a technical masterpiece. Don't come for me.
No, I obviously I don't give you softballs. You have to figure out what I'm doing with the R.A. Dickey knuckleball that comes out.
I'm on the defense now. Wait, I've been on the defense this whole time. I don't know what I mean now.
Yeah,
I've been here defending myself in the hot seat. Are my pants on fire? Like, this is getting ridiculous. Anyways,
well,
to Psycho. I would have loved to be in the theater in 1960 when Psycho debuted.
I thought about this.
I think had I been, or had I grown up with Psycho maybe as a young kid, because I didn't see this till I was an adult when I really started getting into film. I think if I had grown up with Psycho, if I had been around in the 60s when Psycho came out, I think my reaction to this would have been wholly different. It would have been an easy 5-star. It would have been my favorite movies of all time. Because I think this is one of those films that was so revolutionary for its time. It shocked audiences. I mean, there was, if I'm remembering this piece of film history right, Hitchcock was pre-recorded at the start of the film saying, don't spoil the twist. Do not tell people how this film ends, because it was that big of a deal. Because this film was that shocking for the 60s. Whereas now, to our eyes, maybe it's not as shocking to our very seasoned modern horror eyes. But man, to be in that theater seat in the 60s with the smell of popcorn and the sticky floors of Coke, oh man, I can't think of anything. I can think of few film-going experiences that could have been better.
Yeah, same.
So, yeah, it's great. Psycho's a masterpiece. We'll start with what... Good grief, my computer's driving crazy. We'll start with the top. The score of this film is perfection. I mean, it's almost like... Now I'm blanking on his name. Dadgummit. Okay, help me out, because I've lost it.
Ennio Morricone, Hans Zimmer.
No, Steven Spielberg's...
John Williams.
Right. That's it. It's almost like John Williams Who?
Yeah.
Because this score is just so incredible. To me, this was the part that I noticed the most about the film on this rewatch. Because I know the story, I know the twist, I know how it goes, but man, that score is just chilling. It's perfection. It's, to me, that's the highest part. Maybe the highest part, definitely one of the highest parts of Psycho. Yeah, so that's my setup for Psycho. I'm going to go ahead and let you set up and let you start giving some defense before I keep going.
I mean, you said what we all know. Psycho is a masterpiece. There isn't any arguing. Its cultural impact is beyond. excuse me, I mean, you're talking about we're still watching Psycho 65 years later, and I'm still appreciating it as though it could be a film that was made today. It There is so much about Psycho that is so enticing, it's so intriguing. I mean, you're not just talking about the opening credits with and the score of the like everything about it is so good because it's this up and down, it's this tense, it's so suspenseful, it's this we don't know what's on the other end of this score, and it is just, I mean, it is perfect. You're right. I don't think they could have had a better score for this movie. I would argue Psycho could be arguably top 10 scores ever. It is so perfect to its movie. It's so perfect. When I was rewatching it the other night and I heard that score come on, I was like, "Oh, I forgot how cold that is." It's so good. It is so good. And the best part about Psycho that nobody even like, I mean, maybe they think about it in this way, but maybe they don't. Is Psycho is not a movie with one twist. Psycho has two twists. Psycho has this huge turn in the middle of the movie.
Yeah.
And then it has another huge turn at the end of the movie. And so Psycho is one of those that seems as though it is, I mean, it's monumental. You know, the term that he coined that came out was the MacGuffin, right? It's this idea that you have a story where you believe it's headed in one direction. And, you know, the first time I watched it, because I knew kind of what Psycho was about, when I was watching the first, I would say, I think it's about first 45 minutes, I was kind of like, let's get to the good stuff. Come on. The first time I watched it, because I know what's coming, right?
Right.
And I know what this movie's really about, or I kind of have an idea of what this movie's really about. When I rewatched it and just toned out, like, okay, just pay attention. What are you watching? What are you seeing? Like, how are you feeling? It is so suspenseful the first 45 minutes. I 100% get why people were in that theater, like, having no idea when the middle section happens. And essentially, I'll say this again, this is a bit of a spoiler, but this is what it's all about. In the middle of the movie, our lead is murdered. Our lead character that we've been following for 45 minutes is brutally killed in the shower.
Yeah.
And it is, I mean, it is just as terrifying as any kill scene you've ever seen. It's, of course, it's dated. It's the 60s, so you can tell that there's some movements with the knife. There's some weirdness with the way in which the person actually dies. But this lead character, this Mrs. Crane character we've been following, is dead. And now we're like, so who do we follow now? Well, we follow the quirky hotel manager, right?
Yeah, it becomes about Anthony Perkins's Norman Bates.
Yeah, and it's brilliant because then now we're stuck wondering, well, where do we go from here? We're just picking up the pieces. And so for Janet Leigh, who is Jamie Lee Curtis's mom, right? Her character starts out in this place where she is with her boyfriend, right? She's with a well-adapted man to society, someone who is obviously he seems very accomplished. They're in a hotel room. It's sort of this under the radar relationship, but she's surrounded by people. I mean, she's in a huge town. She's in Phoenix, Arizona, or is it Tucson?
Phoenix.
It might be Tucson.
It's Phoenix, yeah.
Is it Phoenix? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So they're in Arizona. They're surrounded by these people. She goes to work. She's surrounded by her coworkers. Like, she's surrounded by all these people. Even when she's leaving, she's in traffic with all of these people, right? And so it creates this feeling of there's people all around her. People will know if she's missing. People will know if she's gone. But you don't know that that's what the movie's doing because you're not anticipating that they're going to kill her. You're not anticipating that this is where this movie's headed. So you're watching and you're like, oh, wow, okay, so she's going to try to run away with this money that she stole. And that's the driving factor. That's the driving point of the movie. That's the suspense. She stole money from a person that she works with at the bank, this client, and now she's leaving town with $40,000. And she's going to try to find her boyfriend and
build a respectable life.
They're going to build a respectable life. They're going to pay off the alimony that her boyfriend owes his ex-wife. And it seems like that's what this movie is going to be about, her journey to her boyfriend. And I was blown away. I was like, I forget how amazing he is at crafting this other story that I'm very interested in. I want to see this story just as much as I want to see the story it turns out to be. And so there's so many things about that when I was watching it, I'm watching it with my wife and she's like, oh, okay. So she's really strange. Like you can see she's acting a little bit odd, like the way that she is driving and she gets to this place where she's going to turn in her car. So she has a different car, but a cop's been following her. Like there's all kinds of weird things going on. She's not making rational decisions. Right.
No.
So it's enticing because you're like, how is she going to mess this up for herself? And she's really just in a hurry to her own death. And you don't think about it in that way either.
No.
You watch it and you're not thinking, oh, she's just rushing to be killed by an unknown killer. We don't know who the killer is whenever they kill her. The way it's framed, the way it's shot, it looks like it's a woman. It looks like the way that the silhouette outlines in the shower curtain, you can see that it has like feminine hair. Right, it looks like a dress. Yeah, it's Mrs. Bates, right? Yeah, so it's like that whoever is coming in here to do it, you're like, what the? This is insane.
Yeah.
So it's all turned on its head. And so for me, when I'm watching it, I felt like I was watching it again for the first time because I was like, holy crap, like what just happened? Our lead's been killed. Now what? That is the brilliance of Hitchcock in this movie. I understand. I usually am wanting to be the first person to jump on the Hitchcock's overrated train. I've seen, I think, about 9 of his films. I've never seen Dial M for Murder. I've actually never seen To Catch a Thief, which I know you also really appreciate. I've not seen North by Northwest. That's another huge one in his filmography that I've yet to catch. Whether it's appreciated by you or not is, beside the point. Those are his big movies, right? I have seen Rear Window, I have seen Vertigo, I have seen Psycho. I've seen like the other claims to fame that he has. I've seen Rope, right? It's like these movies that he was doing something different with.
Right.
Psycho is a movie where he just showcased his ability to be a filmmaker. This is where everything about the movie is like him showing off, look what I can do. And I ate up every second of it. I was like, yep, look what you can do. And so I'm glad you mentioned the score. The score is iconic. I think the dialogue is pretty solid. I especially think the interaction between Mrs. Crane and Norman Bates when they first have the peanut butter and jelly, that scene is intoxicating. I never want to leave that scene.
The best of the film.
Yeah, arguably the best.
Sure is the best in the whole film in that scene.
The framing, everything about that scene is brilliant. So, but yeah, let's hear what you like. Some other feelings towards Psycho you have.
Okay. Psycho's a weird one for me. Because I recognize the brilliance of it. And I recognize that it's Hitchcock almost at his top performance. And it's a very enjoyable film. But where you were talking about those first 40 minutes, how you saw that kind of in a new light and you appreciated that more. I guess maybe I haven't seen it enough because I'm still kind of at that point where I'm like, all right, let's get to the good stuff. Let's get
After
to
the
Norman
murder.
Bates. And that's just a problem that I find that Hitchcock has with me, just kind of blanket across the board, is it's the connecting to maybe the heart, for lack of a better word. It's just the emotional part is something that Hitchcock, for me, struggles more to connect to. And I even found that here in Psycho. And maybe that's because I've seen the film enough that I know the movements and I know the action. That's why I'm like, I wish I would have seen this in the 60s. If I could have been able to have seen this in the 60s, I think the emotional punch of it, or even if I'd seen it as a kid, not knowing the story of Psycho. But the first time I saw Psycho, I knew everything about this film. I knew the midpoint twist. I knew the ending twist. I knew exactly how it was going to play out because it has that reputation. It's just one of those films that you just know. You know how it's going to go. So I never got to be surprised by Psycho. And I think maybe that's part of why it is just that 4-star film. Because I can recognize it. And it was really interesting watching it through the lens of Sleepaway Camp, watching it as putting these two films together. Because I think there were things that I appreciated in Psycho this time more, having that lens of Sleepaway Camp with it.
That happens when you watch something that's horrible and then you watch something that's amazing. You appreciate the amazing.
No, okay. You're funny. That's not exactly where I was going.
But that it happens.
That's true. That's a factor too. You're right. No, but for what I saw, what I noticed, and what I saw, was just the sexual awakenings in the film, the frustration maybe of Norman Bates, the anxiety. I'm not really sure what that right word after sexual is for this film. Maybe it's a little bit of all of that. Maybe it's the awakening, maybe it's the frustration, the anxiety. But that's really how Psycho turns.
Yes.
And I listened to just a couple other people commentating about the film after rewatching it for this podcast because I wanted to sound smart. I wanted to know, what am I missing in Psycho that is keeping it from being that 5-star film? And that was one of the things people talked about, was kind of the sexuality of the film. We open and Mrs. Crane is there with her lover, her boyfriend. It doesn't seem that there's anything bad going on technically. Like, they're not cheating, they're not having an affair. They're just sleeping together when they're not married. Which for that time, and I mean, I would argue even for our time, is not good. It's not beneficial. I'm showing my cards a little bit, trying to get myself canceled again on the internet already before we've even started our show.
It happens.
That's okay. We're going to have more of that coming later in the show, maybe. We'll get into that in other issues. However, they're not doing anything that is... It's more socially taboo than it is socially...
Immoral.
There we go. That's the good word. And I use that socially term. That socially part's important. But she's this woman who she's wanting to live proper. She's wanting to be made an honest woman. And for her boyfriend to be an honest man. That they come together, they build an honest relationship. They get married, and then they get to live out of the shadows. They don't have to sneak around on their lunch break and take a 2-hour lunch so that they can be together and then not even end up eating her lunch. And then, midway through the film, we come to Norman Bates' character, who we find out has this very sordid relationship with women, to the point that every time he feels a feeling towards a woman, his mother steps in, and out of a jealous rage, she kills the woman. Right? That's why Marion Crane dies, because Perkins Bates, because Norman starts to have these feelings for her, because she touches him, as the film says. He's touched by her. He feels an emotional pull to her. So his mother, in a jealous rage defending her son, kills Mrs. Crane. And apparently this has happened over and over, as we come to find at the end of the film. But I found that just really striking, with comparing that to the sexual awakenings and the sexual tension in Sleepaway Camp, and getting to look at those two side by side. That was something that really, rewatching Psycho this time, stuck out to me. The way that it dealt with sexuality, the way that it dealt with that shower murder scene, and the way that would have been so scandalous for the time. The flushing the toilet, which is one of the most scandalous shots in the whole film, because it had never been done before on film up to that point. And for me, that's what stood out. But Psycho has always been one of those, because I knew the story, it's always been more of a mental exercise. It's been what is Hitchcock setting up to pay off? And that's Hitchcock as a filmmaker, right? He's the setups and the payoffs and the twists and the turns and the who's cheating who and how is this mess of humanity going to work itself out. But that was just seeing those two films side by side. That was really interesting to see how sexuality and how the frustrations and the anxiety and the pros and the cons and the positive effects and the negative effects, how they clashed and played together in these two films.
No, and that, yeah, very well put, very well said. I agree wholeheartedly that this movie and Sleepaway Camp are so much more, they're like sexually asexual because they're not explicit in how much people want to have sex or what they want to do with sex or how sex comes to it, but they are definitely curious. It's this feeling of what does this lead to, right? You know, one of the things I'll talk about in Sleepaway Camp here in a bit is the dream sequence that occurs that I completely forgot about the first time I watched it. But, you know, there's an interesting moment right after Marianne Crane gets to see Norman. He's showing her the motel room. And he's pointing out the different things, and he like points over to the bathroom. And he goes, and over here is the she goes, the bathroom. He's like, bathroom, yes. There's an immediate discomfort between him talking to her about the bathroom, which works twofold. Because one, obviously, it's showing he's uncomfortable with the idea of thinking about her being in a private place such as a bathroom, right? It actually works threefold because then you learn later on Norman Bates has a peephole straight from his office that looks straight into the eye of the bathroom, right? And this very weird sensibility of Alfred Hitchcock proving why he's a household name, this foreshadowing of, oh, he has an immediate discomfort to the bathroom because of multiple things. But then third, it works because it's a foreshadow, right? Because that's where the murder takes place.
Right.
And that's what you could argue any of those reasons might be the reason he feels a discomfort mentioning the bathroom. But it all goes hand in hand. They all mean the same, right? Because as soon as he has a sexual thought about her or sexual feeling about her is when he knows she's not going to be here anymore, right? And when you see the murder happen, the part that is the craziest is after Mrs. Bates kills Marianne Crane, the cleanup is very precise. It is a
flawless.
Yeah, it is a procedural attempt. Comes in, gets rid of the body, puts it in the car, gets rid of the car, and there's no trace of Marianne Crane.
Nope.
What makes this part so much more tragic is when Marianne is talking to Norman, and you have one of the best lines in all of horror, if not the best line in all of horror, when Norman is talking to Marianne and he says, "We all go a little mad sometimes." Marianne immediately has a realization. If she continues going down this line, she's noticing Norman Bates as a crazy person. He's not just this. Say that again.
He's a little off his rocker.
Yeah, he's a little off his rocker, right? And so there's this feeling that Marianne has looking at him like, oh, I don't want to end up in this spot. And if I keep going down the trail I'm going down, I'm going to end up in this spot. This isn't going to be good for me. I'm going to be found out. My boss saw me on my way out of work. Like, he saw me and I said I was sick. Like, she already knows. She's seeing the errors of her ways. She doesn't want to end up like Norman Bates, which is so sad, right? Building a subconscious empathy with Norman. Yeah. Hitchcock is a genius, dude. Like, that's why I appreciate this film so much, is because I didn't notice that the first time I saw it. She's realizing I don't want to be crazy.
Right.
So then she decides she's going to leave. She's going to bring the money back. She's going to start over. She's going to hope for forgiveness. She's going to turn her life around. And she doesn't even know it, but in that breath, it's already too late.
And that's the
And
greatest tragedy, perhaps, of this film.
it
Because I
is,
noticed that too this time that I hadn't seen before. Is she's ready. She's ready
yeah,
to get back on that right path, to get
mm,
back on the highway, the main interstate, so to speak. Um, and she doesn't get that chance. She doesn't get the chance to redeem the wrong things that she's done, and that to me is the greatest tragedy in Psycho. Upon this revisit, is that she's ready to do right, and
mm,
she doesn't get the chance. The chance is taken from her. It's already too late.
mm. It is very tragic. And Marianne, Janet Leigh is an excellent actress. She does phenomenal in this movie, especially partnered with Anthony Perkins. Anthony Perkins, if you haven't seen The Trial, I would highly recommend The Trial. It's an old Orson Welles film, and it came out after Psycho. I want to say it was just 2 years after Psycho that it came out. And he plays a similar character to Norman Bates, but he's more eccentric than he is unstable, as I'll say he is in Psycho. But Anthony Perkins, if nobody talks about him enough, right? And he's actually the father of Osgood Perkins, who is a director of some of our more modern horror films that, give or take, are good or bad. If I don't want to criticize Oz Perkins, it's hard to make movies. I understand. It's really hard to make good movies, apparently, but it is Anthony Perkins is a genius in this movie. He plays every mannerism to a T, and when you watch as the movie continues to unfold, one of the things I didn't realize the first time is when you're originally sitting in that room, and maybe this is because I'm an idiot, so that could very well be the case. But you're sitting in this room, and it's surrounded by all these stuffed animals, and there's a lot of references to birds in this movie, which of course Psycho came, I want to say, after the movie The Birds, which could be an homage to another Hitchcock classic, The Birds. Because I want to say, if I'm not mistaken, The Birds came out in '57,
That may be. I can't remember.
and which is 3 years prior to Psycho. And the thing I didn't even notice was that her last name is Crane. Her last name's a bird's name. I don't know if Hitchcock has this weird fascination with birds and what they can represent or what they mean. Because even if you think about North by Northwest, right? One of the biggest moments is the airplane coming down over Cary Grant's character, which is the bird. It's the bird in the sky, right? The plane is the bird. So I would love to dig deep into like directors' idiosyncrasies. Like, what are some of the things that make them like? What are they focused on? And I would argue animals, especially aviary animals, are those things that Hitchcock is focused on. And so, especially if it just even went through, if it was intentional or not to name her Mary Ann Crane, if that was intentional or not, I would love to know. But I appreciated your discussion on Psycho. I think that makes a lot of sense. Why Psycho doesn't have that same appeal to you? I think for me, one of the things is sometimes we watch movies with twists, and after we know what the twist is, we don't care anymore. We watch the twist, we know it's coming, and it's like the energy is sucked out because the twist is what makes that movie worth your time. Now, there are some movies with twists that you watch the twist over and over again, and it's just as satisfying as it was the first time,
Right.
or it's close to it, right? Or you watch the movie with other people.
Psycho is still always satisfying.
Yes, absolutely.
This is a case of the twist is always satisfying.
Absolutely. And so I think with that being said, we dive into the twist.
Let's do it.
So the reason we brought these two together, the reason we decided, you know what, Psycho, Sleepaway Camp, what would make them great to talk about? For me personally, it was because I see one movie as really, really good and one movie as really, really bad. So I thought, what could I do to like talk about them to compare and contrast them? Now, Nolan doesn't have like he knows it's a like. I mean, I'm speaking for you, but you have this feeling of it not being as bad as I think it is. Sleepaway Camp it is, and
Yeah.
Psycho being as you view it as pretty good, but it doesn't have that same effect to you.
Right. That's fair.
But we talked
Totally
about
fair.
it because the twist, the twist in both of these movies is that the killer is a male who is coming across as a female.
Yeah.
At the end of Sleepaway Camp, the best part of Sleepaway Camp, you have multiple staff running towards the lake. And they come upon Angela, this young, quiet woman who is petting ahead. This boy, I don't remember his name. Do you
Paul.
recall his name? What is his name?
Paul. Yeah. Paul.
Paul.
And you
This young
don't
boy,
even know
Paul.
that it's a head yet. They come up on her, and it's her back, and she's completely naked, off kilter, humming this song while petting Paul's head.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're thinking, oh, the chemistry between her and Paul, this boyfriend that she's fostered while she's been there. Maybe they decided they would get a little freaky down by the lake, right? They're far too young for that, but okay.
Certainly how the movie leads you to believe.
Yes. And then you cut to the perspective in front of Angela.
Mhm.
And it is a head. It is not a head attached to a body. It is a head by itself. This is
Yep.
Paul's head,
She
who
stands
is
up, his head falls to the ground.
by far the least deserving death of all of them. Paul, sure, he was a jerk at times, but he's a teenager. That's the thing, dudes are all Oh, I can't even get back on that trend. It's just they're all teenagers, and Paul was the least deserving to die among all them, but he did die. And then when Angela stands up, there is very clearly a distinction between a boy and girl is made. And this person you thought was a girl the entire time turns out to be a young man.
Yep.
And right before this twist is revealed, you see that Aunt Martha is talking to a young kid who was in a boating accident. His
The
name was
brother.
Peter. The
Yep.
brother
that
is the
was
one
in the
that
boating
survived.
accident.
But Aunt Martha is such a freak that she doesn't think that she can have two boys live in the same house, that she already has one boy, so she needs to have a girl. And instead of Peter, this boy's name is going to be Angela. And this forces Peter into a dilemma, and where now he's forced to be a girl. He's forced to be Angela by his aunt. And obviously, unless I'm wrong, the movie seems to indicate, due to not only a sexual repression of who he is, now that he's revealed to be a boy,
Mm-hmm.
he also, due to the fact that he was bullied, is now killing people. So, due to repression, he's now on a murder spree at camp. And you know what's also crazy is there's no justification there other than Artie. Artie deserves it, but everybody else is just kind of a bully. They're just kind of a bully. But they don't deserve to be stabbed in the back and taken a knife down all the way down until they bleed out. No one deserves to be stung to death by bumblebees. No kid deserves to drown, even if they're a bully. Nobody deserves any of it. But they're seen as guilty in the eyes of Angela / Peter. So this reveal, albeit disgusting, the score and the editing makes it
And that
terrifying.
face,
The face of
and that noise that Angela makes.
it is everything. The reveal that they've been setting up to do is honestly, it's great.
I'm getting
is
chills
great.
talking about it again.
Yeah,
Like,
it is not.
genuinely terrifying.
It is genuinely terrifying. And I actually have that in my notes that the twist is genuinely terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
The twist of Angela being a boy is terrifying. Now, it may be arguably more terrifying because of the kill, not necessarily because he's a boy. But that twist of seeing the difference maker, we'll call it that, the difference maker obviously is a shocking reveal. And now
Yeah.
we're our whole thought of how everything else the movie had been showing us is reinterpreted, right?
Yeah, and it's that, and it's not even the head falling that to me is the most scary part, and it's not the difference maker, although that's the biggest shock of the film, but it's that sound, that
Mm,
animalistic growl that I can't even begin to recreate that they
yeah.
got out of Angela. That and matched with the face, her eyes, and her mouth is just so terrifying. I
And
mean, it's
she's a
enough for
star.
that the most seasoned horror fanatic is going to be
Mm,
shook if you've
I
never
would agree
seen
with
this
that.
film before.
Yeah,
So,
I go ahead.
no, yeah, that was it for now for that part of it.
Yeah, so Sleepaway Camp has this ending that is horrifying. It is terrifying. The growl, you're correct. And Angela, like I had mentioned before, sort of like a foreshadow, she is the best character in the movie. She is. There isn't a dispute because you're watching her and there is even the way they do her makeup, even a little bit. I will give it the half star credit it's worth. The way they make her look is when you get to the end and you see that she's a boy. I won't say it's like not surprising, but I will argue that it is one of those things where it's like, I can kind of see how they got there.
mhm.
And that makes the twist worth it. Sleepaway Camp is one of those movies that I am thankful we're talking about now because I'll never have to watch it again. But the twist is it is fascinating and it is one of those things that made me think, what did this movie have to say about sexual repression?
Mhm.
And there's a dream sequence in Sleepaway Camp where it's a reminder of an event that occurred where you see why maybe it was just their dad on the sailboat and not their mom, right?
Mhm.
And Angela, technically Peter, and his sister, there's a dream event where they're watching their father in bed with another man.
Mhm.
And you're seeing, well, they might have been there's obviously some uh early, I don't even know what you want to call it, sort of like plantings in their head of things that could look different in their world.
Yeah.
And the reason this dream is even brought on is because Peter is with this boy Paul, and Paul is wanting to kiss him because he thinks it's a girl. Which also, in full disclosure about Sleepaway Camp, Angela is acted by a girl. Angela is not acted by a boy. So
Yes.
this end scene with the difference maker, that is not the same character we're seeing, or if it is, there's clearly some kind of overlay that they've
And I
employed.
did some looking into that too because I was
Yes,
fascinated.
please
And
explain.
that was a college male because Angela was like 10 or 12 or something at the
Yeah.
time. Um, she was a kid. She was a genuine kid. So this was a college student with a face mask of Angela's face on his head. Is
Okay.
actually how they pulled this off. So, which I found absolutely fascinating.
Which makes me
Angela,
feel better because,
the close-ups were Angela, were the girl, her face.
yep.
They were the actress. But then the full-out body shots was this college male with a cast of Angela's expression face over his head.
Okay. And that makes me feel better. That's a college student, that they didn't do something tragic. But
Mhm.
yeah, so the themes of that movie, I'd seen Sleepaway Camp after I'd seen Psycho. And the themes of Sleepaway Camp harken back to Psycho.
Yeah.
Why would they harken back to Psycho, Nolan?
Because the second big twist of Psycho, as whether you've seen the film or not, you probably know the twist is Norman Bates' mother, which is revealed earlier in the film before the twist, is dead. she's been dead for years. So this person who appears to be the mother who kills Mrs. Crane, and then later this private investigator and all the people who come to the Bates Motel. Wow, that sounded weird. Motel? The Bates Motel. This is Norman Bates dressed as his mother. And we get at the very end of the film, after that reveal, Marion's sister goes down into the basement. She sees Mrs. Crane. She turns around, and we've got this dehydrated corpse of Mrs. Crane that's been taxidermied and preserved by her son to try to keep the memory of his mother alive, to try to keep her alive in his head, because years ago, I believe it's a decade before, he had killed his mother and her lover. And as there's at the very end, there's this scene with the psychologist where he's famously explaining everything that's just happened in the film. He's laying out the rules, he's laying out the groundwork and trying to make sense of it all. And he's explaining this backstory, how he got all this from the mother half of Norman Bates. That Norman had killed his mother and her lover, and the effect of murdering his own mother was so tragic that his mind had to do whatever he could to keep her alive. So at first he goes and he pulls up her corpse and he taxidermies it, and it's there and she's there, but that's not enough. That's not enough to keep this fantasy of his mom being alive and to keep this guilt from murdering her suppressed. So over time, Anthony Perkins, he's taken on the role of his mother, to where we hear these conversations between Norman and his mother, but it's Norman and Norman. He's gotten to this point where his mind is so fractured that he can walk as his mother, he can speak as his mother, and he can carry on this conversation back and forth. And then at the end of the film, the psychologist tells us the mother's won. This tension between these two personalities, this split mind and split life, can only go so long. And finally, the dominant personality has won, probably for the rest of time. And then the final part of this film is this police officer. He's taken a blanket in to Norman, and she's cuddled up. He's cuddled up, but his mother is speaking, and she's thinking all these things. She's like, I had to turn my son in. It's a horrible thing, but I couldn't have him thinking I'd do it because I wouldn't even hurt a fly. And then there's this other connection in the film that I noticed watching both of these. They both end on this crazy grin. Is you've got Angela's face, which is this animalistic, and then you've got Anthony Perkins in Psycho, where it's just a smile, just that slight smile of the mother. And I could
a smile you wouldn't look twice at. A smile you wouldn't look twice at without the context,
right,
of what's going on.
It's just a normal smile, but put in the context of everything, it's creepy. It's incredibly creepy. It's the thing that lingers after the film is over, is that smile of Mrs. Bates coming through Norman. And that's where these two films, they're almost perfect complements to one another, is that they're about, it's this male character that's struggling to live as some form of, as a woman, whether it's Peter as Angela, who physically presents himself as Angela and who keeps private and keeps quiet and showers alone to keep up this persona as Angela, or whether it's Norman, who has got this split life, this split mind of half of him is Norman, the fully male Norman Bates, but then half of him is trying to keep this delusion of his mother alive, to where he's taken on her walk and her voice and her dress. And it's just this fighting of, and this is the part where you can cut me out if you want, and we can edit this part out, or we can keep going. I don't know how many toes we want to try to step on, or how much we want to try to isolate our audience in the first episode. But it's this tension of sexuality. And as watching these two films in 2025, and thinking about the tension of sexuality that's in our world today. I think specifically with Sleepaway Camp, we've got this boy who's forced to live as this girl by an adult authority figure who is clearly fractured herself and needs some help. But this boy forced to live as this girl, forced to live in this sex that he is not, and this toll that it takes on this character. And I think about even our world today, and I don't know if we mentioned this in our intro or not, but we're coming at this, which may be bizarre because it's our first episode about these two horror films, but we're coming at this as two Christian men who we believe in the tenets of Christianity. We believe in what Scripture says is true, and we love horror movies. So if you're part of our crew, welcome. You're welcome here. We love Christian horror fans in this podcast. But anyways, we stand on what the Bible says about men and women and male and female, and watching Sleepaway Camp and then thinking about children who are not feeling at home in their bodies, not feeling at home as male or female as children do when they're discovering their sexuality and when it's starting to emerge, and what does it mean to be male or what does it mean to be female. And these boys and girls that at 10, 12 years old are suddenly, they're like, I feel like being a boy. I want to be a boy. So then they go and they get procedures done and now they're a boy. Or they're boys who are like, I feel like a girl. And they go and they become girls. And then these two films, whether I don't think that's exactly what they were portraying, I think they were portraying more sympathy for these people who have at least Sleepaway Camp for sure. Psycho, you could argue, I don't know if that's actually the point of Psycho, where you could argue that they're portraying sympathy for these people. You're seeing the negative effects of forcing a child to live as something that they weren't made to live. You're seeing a boy that was forced to live as a girl and the way that it affects him. You see Norman, who's trying to keep alive the memory of his mother. It's different. It's not in the same way. He's not trying to live as his mother, per se. But you see the fracture that this takes and the confusion around the sexuality of who am I and how do I live this out? And then the negative effects in Angela's case, and also in Norman Bates's case, of this complete almost rejection of who they were created to be and how it affects everything about them. So I don't know where I was going with that. I kind of wanted to address that part of these films because that's such a big part. Again, more so with Sleepaway Camp than it is with Psycho. With Psycho, it's much more of a mental fracture. It's not a physical alteration or a change as it is in Sleepaway Camp. But I just looking at these two films in 2025 and knowing what's going on in our social world and our society and the ways the changes we're making and the things we're saying are right and wrong and how it's blurring, and how right and wrong blurred for these characters and the effects that it had on them. I just thought maybe that was worth rambling on about for a little bit and just recognizing that the way it works, how it's connected to the things going on in our world today.
No, I appreciate you talking about it. I mean, it's not something that we're seeking to condemn people who are transgender or seeking to condemn anybody who struggles with their sexual orientation. Our discussion is talking about how you have two characters who are both men, which, by the way, who are both male serial killers at this point. They aren't just men who have killed in an impulsive reaction. They are serial killers. These are people who are continuing to murder, and they're both doing it from a perspective of being a woman. And there's another movie that I have yet to see, and I don't know entirely how it's revealed in that one, but the discussion of Dress to Kill, which is a Brian De Palma film, might also wrestle with that same mentality. But when you're talking about Psycho versus Sleepaway Camp, there's a line at the very end of Psycho whenever he says that he dressed as a woman and the cop says he's transvestite. And the psychologist is like, yes and no. Like there's this feeling of not there. He's not doing he's not dressing as a woman because he's finding sexual satisfaction in it. That's what men would do, is they would dress as women to find sexual satisfaction. Norman is not dressing as a woman because he's finding a satisfaction. He's dressing as a woman because he's trying to keep up the persona of his mother being alive.
Right.
And both of these killers, some of the similarities I noticed is it's both men. Both of them are men, or boys, or males, however you want to subscribe to them as. But they are both dressing as females. And so there is this feeling of they're needing to put on a mask, right? When you watch any other horror or slasher film, the scary thing about the slashers is they have a mask on, right? Leatherface is literally wearing another person's face. You have Michael Myers, who wears a mask. You have Ghostface, who wears a mask, right? You have Freddy Krueger, whose face is so burnt to a crisp that it looks like an otherworldly face. It doesn't look like a real person's face. These people are having to dress differently in order to accomplish a goal because they don't want to live with the consequences of their own actions.
Right.
And so where with Angela, there is definitely a huge sympathetic bone there, because you're talking about a kid who was forced to be a different person. It's not even about their sexuality. It's about their personality and their identity, where they came from. We're not even told where the name Angela comes from, because we don't know if his sister's name was Angela.
Right.
Right? There isn't this belief that she's just giving him a name that would be familiar to him. It's a whole different personality. It's a whole different feeling. And with Norman Bates, he's taking on his mother, Norma, which is also just a whole discussion in and of itself, talking about Oedipus Rex, of he's named after his mother. And so there is you can go down that whole rabbit trail of why is he named after his mother and not his father, which is already a subversion to the normality of our world, right? A man is named after his father, but this kid was named after his mother, which already could have instilled a feeling of that, right? And so they're both killers, and they're both killing as a female, until arguably, the end of Sleepaway Camp, where you have that reveal that Angela is Peter. And they both have complicated relationships with their mother figure, right? Yeah. Obviously, Peter has a complicated relationship with his mother figure because it's Martha. He doesn't know who his mother is, or it's at least portrayed that way. And you don't ever meet his real mother, right? But you notice that obviously there's some issues because his dad is gay. So whether his issues are coming from the fact that he doesn't know how to deal with his own father's sexuality, or because he doesn't know where his mother is and what the relationship he could have as a young boy with his mom, he doesn't know where that's at. And then the one mom he does get is an absolute lunatic, and she's like irredeemable in some ways. Like, definitely like a victim, right? Yeah. He's a victim of his circumstance. Norman is less of a victim. There's this understanding when you have the boyfriend and you have Mary Ann's sister go to the sheriff of the town, and they talk to him, and there's an understanding that Norman has been weird. Norman's always been weird.
Yep.
And there's not this feeling that because of the trauma that he has become this killer, but that he's always had that element of him, right? And so the other thing on top of the sexual repression that I wanted to discuss is that they're both outcasts.
Yeah.
They're both people segregated from society. Norman lives literally alone. He's so alone, he has to pretend his mother's alive. That's how alone this guy is, right? And then you get to Angela, who's lost her father and her brother, and she's alive, and he's alive, father and her sister, and right. He's alive. Sorry, it gets a little confusing. It's a little hairy. But he's lost his father and his sister, and he's living with his cousin, and now he's forced to be a different person. So of course he's going to come across as an outcast. He's not anything but an outcast, right? This is an outcast before outcasts were outcasts. And so it is this feeling that you're like, he is very separate. And you think about Joker, which is a completely different movie, which could also be possibly a movie you could always compare with these three too. Joker's an outcast.
Yeah.
And when he's treated down by society, how does he act out? He kills, he murders, he wants to take down those who see him as different. And it is fascinating. And so it's very interesting to see what Sleepaway Camp either consciously or subconsciously borrows from Psycho.
Right.
They even, now if they're doing this for homage or not, I'm not sure. But they
Probably.
both have shower kills. And that is also very fascinating thing when you're talking about sexual repression. The most sexually vulnerable you can be, other than the act of sex, is in a shower.
Naked.
When you're completely naked, you're completely vulnerable. There's this feeling of, oh, this is something. There's been an invasion. There's been an invasion of privacy. There's been a line crossed, and it is just amazing to see how Psycho accomplishes it without you realizing who it is. And Sleepaway Camp then also pays homage to it by accomplishing it without you seeing who it is, but you kind of have a feeling. And so there's so many similarities between the two killers. And I would argue until the very end, you have sympathy for both of them. But then when you get to the end and you see the animalistic ferality within Angela / Peter, you start to feel a little less sympathetic and start to feel a little bit more terrified.
Well, and then the same thing goes for Norman with
Yeah.
that final moment when he's speaking out as his mother. You're like, okay, you're scary. Like, you're not just this guy who's been outcast alone and mistreated. You're dangerous. And you're scary.
Even his physicality when he runs into the room after Marianne's sister finds the dead mother.
Yep.
And they have the iconic shot, which it is just an amazing shot, where she throws her hand back and hits the light. And then Norman runs in and goes, "I'm Norma Bates."
Almost
And
with
he's
the
like,
same kind of grin and gaping mouth that Angela has.
yes.
Being the Sleepaway Camp.
And so it is just such like this moment where you maybe feel bad for them up to this point.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think could also be a discussion in and of itself, is why do we finally feel bad for these characters? Why do we feel bad for these characters up until we know what they've been doing? And so it's almost as if like you could sit here and believe, oh, because their actions are important, right? Their actions, what they do with their actions. And, on that topic of transgenderism, we've talked about, we see in society, transgender people tend to have violent streaks at times. I mean, you have school shootings in which they are done by transgender people. And it is a very and of course you have school shootings done by straight white males, which also,
Of course,
are really, I mean, I don't know what you would say about Peter. Peter may not be straight. He doesn't know. But Norman is straight.
Yeah.
Norman wants to be with women. There is no argument there, right? And so it is just interesting how their conflict of sexuality leads to crazy acts of violence. And so now, of course, there are differences, right? I think that you look at one of the main differences, and I'll let you speak to this as well, but one of the main differences is in Psycho, they're all in isolation.
Yeah.
Like, it's just Norman just at his motel. That's it. Those are when the kills take place.
Right.
Where in Sleepaway Camp, they're literally at a camp surrounded by kids. The fact that Artie is yelling for Ben to come into the kitchen means that Ben is probably or could be within earshot.
Yeah.
And Peter is just like, nope, I'm pushing you into the vat of boiling water. It's like this feeling of there is a risk taken.
Yeah.
With every kill that Angela takes, Peter. Angela / Peter. With Norman, it is clearly this is a procedural attempt. This is something that's been done before. He knows what he's doing. And it's just as eerie as the impulse kills, right? It's just as eerie. But I wonder, this could be a good question to ask maybe some other more talented filmmakers. When's the moment Norman realizes he's going to kill? When he is talking to a woman or he's talking to a person, when is the moment Norman realizes Norma's going to kill? I would love to know what other people have to say about that, because I would find that really fascinating to talk about.
Yeah,
So
I don't know.
Yeah, but and I have other differences here, but I don't want to take up all the time. If you have some differences you wanted to speak to, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
I mean, obviously, obviously, you've got the difference in quality of just the filmmaking as a whole. You've got the obvious slasher versus the more kind of subtle slasher thriller type feel. All of those different things there separate the two films. You've got the color and the black and white. You've got the brashness versus the more controlled, for a lack of a better word. The volatility of Sleepaway Camp, murders, language, all that included, versus the control that we see in Psycho of the kills and the calmness and the language and all that thing. Of course, part of that is made in the 80s versus made in the 60s. Like, that all plays a part in it. But when you look at as the characters and as the situations, it takes on a whole different meaning. But that's just a couple of the differences. They're just very clear. They're on the surface.
Yeah, I think on a technical standpoint, the differences are going to be like obvious, right? There's not really going to be an argument on the quality of the filmmaking, right? And so when I was thinking too about the differences, I was thinking even just some of the thematics, right? Like, and their storyline. Like, Norman chooses to become his mother. He has this choice. There is this feeling that's embedded within him where he's able to become a different person. Where with Angela / Peter, he's forced into being this persona by his aunt, right? There isn't really a choice for him until the end, right? And it's really not even that you've been revealed to the fact that he is no longer like traumatized. He's still very traumatized, and he's still very much like this person who is you don't know if he's come to the realization that he's going to be a boy from now on. Like, you don't know that. You don't have that confidence. Where at the end of Psycho, you have that confidence. He's no longer going to be Norman. It seems Norma has won out, right? Norman used to be the one doing all the talking, but as you mentioned earlier, at the end of the film, Norma does all of the talking for him. And I find it interesting that one has a choice and one's forced into it. And I also find it interesting that Norman is fueled by his mother's identity. He's fueled by who his mother is, and she's the one who does the killing. Where in Sleepaway Camp you have Angela is fueled by his own identity. He's not fueled by someone else's identity. He's fueled by his own. His own is what takes over, right? And so it's this idea that he's repressed is what causes him to do the killing. And so on top of that, Norman kills guilty or innocent people. Norman is killing innocent just bystanders that just show up. Where, yes, they are teenagers or they're adults. One already is very guilty, but the rest of them are not. They're not really worthy of being murdered, but they are more guilty because they have wronged Angela in some way or another. And so there's this justification, you could argue, that she has more of a justification to kill these people. And so where Norman doesn't have that justification, Norman just kills because he kills, and he's fueled by Norma in that way. And so I thought it was interesting rewatching both of them, seeing the differences that they have and the similarities. There's just so much to dive in between the two of them, and they're both interesting films to watch. They are. As bad as I think Sleepaway Camp is, I still find it interesting to watch. It's interesting in a bad. It's so bad it's good at sometimes. At other times it's just so bad it's
I'm
bad.
glad sometimes it's good for you.
It's at least laughable, right? Like Ricky, right?
Ricky.
Cursing the kids on top of the roof. That is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. It's so dramatic, it's over the top, but it's perfect for what they're accomplishing. So I think, unless you have any other comments about either of these movies, I think I'm good on the discussion between Sleepaway Camp and Psycho. Recommend you both, everybody, to watch both of them. I'm not going to say you're going to watch Sleepaway Camp and be blown away. I'm going to say you're going to watch Sleepaway Camp and maybe gather some friends around and yell and do some screaming about how bad it is. But Psycho, I would say you should watch. If you've never seen Psycho, you need to watch Psycho.
Assuming that we haven't just spoiled it for you. Which, if you're made it this far, hopefully you've seen both the films before. But maybe rewatch them, give them a recheck. But yeah, I'm glad that we could have this discussion about Sleepaway Camp, because I was super excited to have this with you. It was I loved the fact that I made you rewatch it. That was so much fun for me. I'm sure you're gonna get me back here in the future, and it'll be totally okay. We'll just roll with it. But that puts a wrap on these two films for me. I was glad to get to watch them together in conversation with these two films, because I would have never thought about these two together, but they complement each other so well.
In very unique ways.
It's strange how well they complement each other.
Absolutely. All right. So to finish up, let's go ahead and jump into our horror icon ranking. And we thought, with it being Halloween, I don't remember if we mentioned it at the top, but we were going to finish this up with 9 horror icons apiece. I have a blind spot. I've never seen Child's Play, so I'm not going to rank Chucky as one of my horror icons. But Nolan also has a blind spot in that he's never seen Candyman, and so he's not going to rank Candyman in his 9. But I will rank Candyman. He will rank Chucky. Both of them will be accounted for. And so as we do this ranking, I'll go ahead and have Nolan explain what our process was for ranking these 9 characters, what we thought, and how we came to what we came to.
Yeah, so this was interesting when we looked at ranking these icons of horror, because there's the temptation to just go, oh, well, this movie's our favorite and this one's our least favorite, and rank it that way. But of course, we figured that wasn't a full, complete picture. So we actually used 3 criteria as we were going through the ranking, and then we took the average of each of those criteria. So we took out of 5 with each one. The first one was, we looked at our personal preference. How do we feel about the film? How do we feel about the slasher? And we gave that a ranking out of 5. And then we looked at what's the cultural significance of the film. And of course, we didn't go and research this deep dive. We just, how did we feel this film has affected horror communities and the horror culture and the slasher genre at large? How significant did we feel it was? And we ranked that out of 5. And then lastly, we ranked how likely we would be to survive this killer. How strong is this slasher? Would we be able to win? Would we lose limbs? Or would we just be rolling over on our back dead? Those were the 3 criteria we took. We took it out of 5, we averaged it together, and that's how we came up with our list. So at the top of my list, probably not to Brady's surprise, maybe not to the surprise of a lot of people, but maybe at the top surprise to some, is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. It's one of my favorite films of all time. It is one of, I think, the most culturally significant films of all time, and that 50 years later, this thing is still going strong and still disturbing audiences, young, new, and old. And if you put me in a cornfield with Leatherface, I'd be toast. There ain't no way I'm getting out of that alive. So he had 5 stars across the board. It was the top of my list. It was an obvious choice for me.
Hmm.
The second one is where it gets a little dicey. Not too dicey, but a little bit. And I put Nightmare Before Christmas. Whoa, sorry. This is very raw, so we're just going to go with it. Not Nightmare Before Christmas. Nightmare on Elm Street. I put Freddy Krueger as number 2. Because, again, Freddy's one that, man, if I came face to face with Freddy, I'm toast. I like my sleep. And if my sleep is what brings Freddy, you just call me Johnny Depp at the end of the first Nightmare. I am done for. So number 2 was Nightmare on Elm Street with Freddy Krueger. Number 3 for me, and this film got a lot on personal preference. Number 3 is Scream. I love Scream. It's my favorite horror film of all time. It's one of my top 5 favorite films of all time. I mean, we got it on the shirt. We're representing. But Ghostface has been getting his butt kicked by teenagers since the 90s. I think in a room with Ghostface, I think I'd be okay. But my personal affection for the film and the way that it just reinvigorated the slasher genre is enough to keep it at a strong number 3. And then number 4, which may be shocking to much of the horror masses, is Halloween. I respect Halloween. I have great respect for what it did. I love the rules that it set for the slasher genre, and I'm indebted to it for films that I love. But it's not ever been one of my favorites. I think Michael Myers is going to put up a fight, but I'm pretty sure I can outpace him if I needed to. So coming in at number 4, we've got Michael Myers and Halloween. Number 5, we've got the Saw franchise, Billy and Jigsaw.
Wow, that's a surprising one.
I thought
sure.
that might be for you, but I love the Saw film. Now, granted, I've seen the first film. I haven't seen the others. I don't have an interest in the others. I have a limit on how much I can take. But the first Saw film, to me, is one of the reasons why I love horror. It's so potent in the sense that it speaks to a deeper theme about humanity, about life, about the beauty of being alive. And then thinking about some of the Saw traps, I was like, man, I got a chance. I could survive this. But I was also like, oh man, I'm coming out of here losing some limbs or something. It's going to be ugly for me. So that puts Saw square in the middle, number 5 on my list. And then number 6, I've got Pinhead with Hellraiser. Hellraiser is a great time, but if I came face to face with Pinhead, I'd be in trouble. I just don't want to do that. I don't want to be a pile of goop on the floor. I ain't playing with that. Number 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 6, much to my, it's not 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Number 7. I can't math apparently tonight. Much to my dismay, is Friday the 13th. And here's why. I am not a fan of the original Friday. I think it's one of the dullest movies ever. But Friday the 13th began the camp slasher craze. The impact that Friday the 13th left on culture is undeniable. And because of that impact and because of the way it influenced horror, that helps it. And helps it not to be the final film in my ranking. It gives Jason a boost. I know there's a lot of people that love Jason. I know I may catch some flack for that. It's okay. But Friday comes in at my number 7. Number 8, which was really sad for me, was Child's Play. Because I really like Child's Play. But I'm like, Chucky, I think I could punch you across the room and be okay. I don't think that you would have as much of an effect on me. I think I'd survive with you pretty okay. Which, unfortunately, puts Chucky lower on the list. So Child's Play is my number 8. Which leaves, for number 9, Pennywise and It. And doesn't mean anything low at all. I don't want to see Pennywise. I don't want to come into contact with that. I think he could take me. But he's not going to take me like Leatherface. He's not going to take me like Freddy Krueger. He's not going to take me like Michael Myers. And the cultural impact, from what I understand of it, I mean, it's made a difference, and Pennywise is all over the place in the horror genre. But when I stacked him up with films like Halloween and Scream and Friday the 13th, in my mind, he just didn't measure up. So that's my list. We got Leatherface, Freddy, Ghostface, Michael Myers, Jigsaw Billy, Pinhead, Jason, Chucky, and Pennywise.
All right. Well, for my ranking, I'm going to do it from least to best, just to give a little bit of a different flavor. And I, of course, used basically the same criteria that you used. Now, maybe my reasonings might sound a little bit different, but I feel like you're going to see where I'm coming from. And so at number 9, I have Pinhead and the Cenobites. Now, I have him at number 9 based on I don't feel like the cultural impact of Hellraiser is really that grand. I don't think the cultural impact of Hellraiser has really made a huge difference in the horror genre. And I feel like for me, when I'm watching the movie, when I'm thinking about Pinhead and the Cenobites, what calls them to come is the box. If I never get in contact with that box, I'm safe. I don't have to worry about the Cenobites. I don't have to worry about Pinhead. If I never open that box, I'm not in any danger. And even going on top of that, now you can argue that, you might come in contact with the box and you might not realize where it's from and you might want to be like a part of it. You might want to see what it does. Sure. But if you look at Frank, his character in Hellraiser, he escaped. He got out of where he was. So even if you get to a point where you're with Pinhead and the Cenobites, you might still be able to get out of there. Granted, you might have 0 skin left on your body, but you might still be able to get out of there. So for me, Pinhead, it's at number 9. And number 8, I have Jigsaw. I have Billy the Puppet and Jigsaw. Now, Jigsaw, I've seen 9 of the 10 Saw movies. And so I have a different perspective coming into it than you do. Saw has a cultural relevance that, for some reason, when you talk to people who love horror movies, and that's the only genre of movie they love the Saw franchise. They think the Saw franchise is God's greatest gift to horror. And like, more power to them. And this is not to diss anybody who loves a franchise. You guys are finding stuff in that franchise that I'm not finding. Now, of course, there's a twist at the end of every movie, and that's what makes people keep coming back. But for Jigsaw as a killer, his prime time is the first movie. It is. The reveal of the first movie is brilliant. And then you realize as he continues to go on and he's setting up these games, and it's all about these bad people trying to get out of the situation. That's where Jigsaw shines. And so for me, I don't feel like I would have to worry about it as much because I'm not a horrible person that Jigsaw is going to deem worthy enough to lock up and try to make me cut off my own limbs. Now, if I do end up in that spot, I don't know that I would have the gumption to cut off my hand or my foot. But for right now, I feel pretty okay. I feel like I can make it past a Jigsaw trap, even if I'm in that spot. And if it's undeniable, it's undeniable. I think that's the way with any of these killers. If you come in contact with most of these killers, you're not making it out, aside from maybe Chucky. But of course, I've not seen Child's Play, so can't argue there. At number 7, I have Pennywise. And Pennywise at number 7 makes a lot of sense to me because, 1, he preys on the fear of children. I'm not a child anymore. I feel like that idea of not being a child it won't affect me the same way. I do think the cultural relevance of Pennywise has ramped up in the last couple of years. And of course, you have It, from the Stephen King novel, and you have It from the Tommy Lee Wallace TV movie, two-parter from the 90s. Of course, you have that as well, but the cultural relevance of Pennywise is not as strong as these killers I'm about to name. Even some of the killers below, I would say it's not nearly as strong as Jigsaw even. But Pennywise is a terrifying, especially the Bill Skarsgård rendition, is a terrifying rendition of a horror demon clown. I mean, absolutely just terrifying stuff. At number 6 is where I have Candyman. Candyman, for me, his threat level becomes higher because I would be the guy that would hear, if you say his name 3 times, he'll appear. I'd be like, yeah, bull crap. And then I'd go to the bathroom and I'd say his name 3 times. And Candyman would be there to shake my butt. So that to me is one of those things where I look at it like I would be caught up in the trend of trying to say Candyman's name and having him appear behind me. And the movie, it's a great movie. It really is. It's got a lot of solid work in it, and I feel like it actually has aged better in my mind the more I think about it, versus when I even just first watched it. And so I would love to rewatch it. I need to rewatch it. And the cultural relevance of Candyman is a very interesting one because Candyman as an idea is a much more terrifying idea than it is as a person. Nobody's really thinking about Tony Scott when they say Candyman. They're really thinking more of this idea of that horror figure. And so I think it has a very interesting, compelling cultural impact. And so Candyman is just, it's my number 6 for a strong reason.
And just so we don't get ripped in the comments, it's Tony Todd, not Tony Scott.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Tony Todd. I don't know where I got Tony Scott from. Excuse me, but Tony Todd, who also made his last appearance in Final Destination: Bloodlines, R.I.P. He is a very unique figure in the horror genre, and I think it's hard to ignore his impact, despite me getting his name wrong. And so I think that Tony Todd is excellent Candyman. And don't get me wrong, when I said his name wrong, I saw his face and I saw his body movement and I saw the fear that he instilled in those in that movie. And so I also think the sequel / remake, whatever you want to call it, I'm okay with or without it, but it definitely is. I would say it's worth your time. It definitely has some good scares. At number 5, I have Jason. This is where I have Jason from Friday the 13th. Friday the 13th, I've seen 2 Friday the 13th movies. I've not seen the second one. I've seen part 1, and I've seen the remake type with Jared Padalecki from Supernatural. And Jason is a terrifying figure. He is. If you come into contact with Jason, the idea of you making it out alive is a stupid one. You're probably not going to make it out alive in a Jason confrontation. He's too strong of a killer. You're at Camp Crystal Lake and it's going. He's coming after you. You're having too much sex with these women, and he's going to come after you. You're not making it out of this one. And so Jason, he is a terrifying figure. He's got one of the most iconic faces in horror ever with the hockey mask and the machete. I mean, you're just not getting a scarier, you're just not getting a more profound or like a more like prominent figure in horror. You're arguably not. I would say if you ask anybody, most people are going to know who Jason is. Jason Voorhees, right? I obviously have no affection for this character. He's not someone I grew up on. He's not somebody I look back at and think, wow, he's something special. But his strength and his cultural relevance is impossible to ignore. They have a video game after him now. I mean, it's impossible to ignore. At number 4 is where I'm going to have Ghostface. Ghostface, obviously, I don't think is as strong as Jason. But I also find myself in a situation where I might be surrounded by a Ghostface before I'd be surrounded by Jason. And Ghostface is one of those that leans a lot, again, on affection. It leans a lot again on favor towards the film and my nostalgia for it growing up. Scream was the first scary movie I ever saw, and it is one that I watch. I tried to watch it every October, every time it comes around. I try to see it in theaters when they show it because it means that much to me. And so Ghostface is one of those where, as you mentioned, he's been getting his butt kicked since the 90s. He's not outlasting anybody. He's not doing, like, I mean, my wife watched the first one with me and she was like, they obviously don't find who the killer is because, well, there's 6 more after this. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting thought because I would have never thought that. But then I was like, well, that means every single time, and the realistic approach is that every single time they lose, right? That's why we keep having more ghost faces. And so Neb is arguably a stronger serial killer than than any of the Ghostface killers. So you take it for what you will, but it's the truth. And so yeah, I think Ghostface is just a strong killer. He's also a very scary approach. When you look at all of these people, they're all of, other than Jigsaw, you look at Candyman, you look at Pennywise, you look at Pinhead, you look at Jason, they're all these demonic forces. Ghostface could be your neighbor. And I think that there's something super frightening about that idea. And then we get in the top 3. The top 3 were always going to be the top 3 for me. It just depended on the order. At number 3, I have Freddy Krueger. Freddy Krueger, Nightmare on Elm Street, it holds up. It's a fantastic movie. It's a 4.5, 5-star movie for me. I love that movie. I think it is an unbelievable scary time watch. It gives you the vibe like no other. Freddy Krueger is horrifying. Scissors, like knives for fingers, like that is terrifying. That is such an unbelievable like costume design from them for that character. That character design is unbelievable. And so for me, Freddy Krueger doesn't reach the top 2 because the other 2 just mean a little bit more to me. And if I stay awake, I can beat him, like I could beat him if I stay awake. Even at the end of the first Nightmare on Elm Street, the idea is that, Nancy won, right? That's the idea. Whether it's true or not when you finish the film is to be debated. But yeah, there's that feeling of just stay awake, just stay awake, just stay awake, which is also terrifying in its own right. I'm gonna have to sleep sometime. So Freddy Krueger at number 3. In number 2, I have Leatherface. I think Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a top 10 favorite movie of all time for me. When I first watched that movie, I was in a college dorm and I watched it on my laptop. And I watched it during Halloween time. I think it was like October 9th. And I say that because it had such a profound effect on me. It was 2019 or no, it was 2018. And I had that moment when I watched a scary movie and I was like, this is actually horrifying. It's from the 70s and I think I'm going to have nightmares. That's how scary that movie is. And it's grimy, it's gross, and Leatherface is a force to be reckoned with because Leatherface doesn't work by himself. Leatherface is the only one of these people, arguably other than Jigsaw, but I would say Leatherface is really the only one of these people that doesn't work alone. Leatherface has a family to go along with it. And they're equally as scary as he is in their own right. And if you've never seen the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I don't know what you're doing, but you need to watch it. And you need to get on it as soon as you can. It is one of the best horror movies of all time. It's one of the best movies of all time. R.I.P. Tobe Hooper. So obviously, you know what that leaves me at number 1? That leaves me with the GOAT, Mike Myers. Mr. Michael Myers is one of those characters that is horrifying to look at. He's horrifying to watch. He's a stalker. He is strong. He's of some other force. I mean, in the movie, he's described as just evil incarnate. He is this idea that he is just this other worldly being, this other worldly evil. And so Halloween, I also watched the same year that I watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre for the first time, and Halloween changed my feeling on what it meant to be a guerrilla filmmaker. What it meant to be just get as many people as you love and become this person who is just willing to make a movie. I mean, they filmed this in California. They don't the pumpkins they use aren't even pumpkins. They're gourds. They're these huge gourds that they use that they paint orange because they don't have access to pumpkins where they're at. But tell me you think of a Halloween time movie and what screams Halloween more than Halloween? Michael Myers is the definitive killer for me, not just based on nostalgia, not based on critical. He was the only one who almost got a perfect 5. He was the only one. And that's because he's undeniable in his strength. He's undeniable in his cultural impact. We've had so many Halloween movies. I've only seen 5 of them. I've seen all of the David Gordon Green renditions, which the first one is the only one worth watching. And I've seen the original Halloween, and I've seen Halloween 2. So I still have so many other Halloweens to catch up on, but all of them are fantastic. They are, well, I will say the first Halloween is fantastic. The rest of them are in their own right fantastic for the people who appreciate the lore of Michael Myers. A lot of people really like the David Gordon Green renditions. A lot of people like the second one. My opinion on them doesn't really matter. I'm not going to tell you not to watch them, though, because I feel like that they might bring joy to your life. So my final ranking is at number 9, I have Pinhead. At number 8, I have Jigsaw. Number 7, I have Pennywise. Number 6, I have Candyman. 5, Jason Voorhees. 4, Ghostface. 3, Freddy Krueger. 2, Leatherface. And 1, Michael Myers. And so some of the honorable mentions we had discussed was Art the Clown from the Terrifier series. If you feel like we didn't give him the credit he deserves, I would argue that he doesn't deserve the credit. But it's possible that he does. And maybe the longer he stays around and the more culturally relevant he becomes, maybe the more he deserves it. So
Yeah,
that's
you
my
have
ranking.
to him for that. I can't speak to Art. I've not had any experience with those films. They are not my cup of tea.
So, but those are our rankings. And so we just want to thank you guys for jumping on our first ever podcast. Stay tuned. We have some great topics of conversation coming up in our next couple of episodes. We have, November coming up, so that's a great time to talk about our favorite noir movies. And then, of course, after that, you have Christmas time. So please stay tuned as we hope to hit you with some recommendations that maybe you're not familiar with, or if you are familiar with them, maybe you'll agree or disagree with our takes. And so we thank you guys for joining us, and we hope that you join us again. And so the best thing you can do is listen to podcasts like these. We would recommend the podcast Film Spotting. If you've not ever heard of Film Spotting, they're 2 amazing film critics from Chicago, Adam Kempenaar and Josh Larson. And we just hope that if you have the opportunity to listen to other films podcasts, that they would be one that you would take the opportunity to give a try as well. Part of our inspiration for starting one even.
Yeah,
And
these guys
so
are professionals. They know what they're talking about, and they sound a whole lot smarter than, I'll just speak for myself, than I do. So
then we do.
Definitely carries a little more than the little bit of salt that ours does. So check them out over at Film Spotting. And we hope that you guys just continue to watch some good movies, watch some bad movies, get in the discussion, enjoy the sleepaway camps, enjoy the psychos. We'll catch you next time.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
I'm finished.